Hello, crime enthusiasts, are you ready for another chilling investigation? The case of Nathan Paet. Nathan Paet was born on February 12, 1982 in Tamining, Guam. Nathan was not only lucky to be born in a wonderful land, but also grew up in a large and loving family. He has 3 brothers, Matthew, Anthony, Eric, and a sister, Carmela. All of his siblings are very friendly and always ready to help their parents in everything. Nathan stands out from the others because he never causes trouble. At home, he is a thoughtful son, and at school, he is a diligent student. His outgoing personality helps Nathan make friends easily. He was always the center of attention and his name was often mentioned. Nathan grew up near the ocean and loved swimming since he was a child. Later, he was also passionate about surfing. He often spent all his free time on the beach, enjoying the sunshine and coastal life. While studying at South High School in Santa Rita, Nathan met Michelle, who would later become his wife. He was attracted to her from the first time they met. They began to spend a lot of time together and their feelings grew deeper. They were always together, studying, preparing for schoolwork and helping with housework. Their strong teenage friendship gradually turned into sweet love. When Michelle was 16, her family suffered a great loss when her mother passed away. Michelle spends all her time helping her older sister Melissa, the oldest in the Michelle family, take on the role of mother and manager of the family. Nathan has always supported Michelle and helped take care of the younger siblings. In 2000, after graduating, Nathan proposed to Michelle and she accepted. Because they could not afford a wedding, with the consent of their families, they decided to move in together and start a new life. Nathan found a job as a receptionist at a local hotel. His income was enough to cover his living expenses. However, like many other young people, Nathan and Michelle had their own ambitions. They planned to have their own house and independent life. After getting married, Nathan and Michelle welcomed their first son, Dion. Nathan decided to join the Air Force to improve their family's life because his income was not sufficient. After graduating, Nathan was assigned to Elmendorf Air Force Base in Anchorage, Alaska. Although Michelle had to stay home to take care of the children, the family had a stable income. Gradually, their dream became a reality. They built their own house and had a second daughter, Niara. Nathan's success in the military motivated both of them to strive for things they had never achieved before. Finally, after 6 years of being engaged, Michelle and Nathan had a big wedding. Eric shared, "My mother was extremely proud that her youngest son was the first in the family to have a successful career." In 2006, Nathan was transferred to Davis-Monthan Air Force Base in Arizona. There, he was promoted to the position of weapons loader for an A-10 Thunderbolt attack aircraft in one of the Essex squadrons. He also received additional training in logistics and material management. Nathan was passionate about his work and always tried his best. More importantly, he worked with the spirit of serving his country. One colleague described Nathan as a son of the country. In 2007, Nathan and his family moved to Nellis Air Force Base near Las Vegas, Nevada, to take up a new job. There, he was assigned as a junior officer in charge of the supply department, serving the maintenance of fighter aircraft. Along with the development of his career, Nathan's family also grew. Soon after, the Paets welcomed 2 more sons, Drawn and David. Michelle loved life in Las Vegas and considered it an ideal place to live. To please his wife, Nathan decided to find the most suitable house for their large family, a spacious and airy house. The family's dream house was located about 30 to 40 minutes away from the military base. Nathan used his savings to pay for the down payment. Now, the most important thing was to manage the family's income and expenses reasonably. He might need to save more in the future. At least until Paet had a new business opportunity. Initially, Michelle was excited about the unexpected gift from her husband and started planning for their new life. However, over time, the cost of living increased. They spent more than Nathan's income, and the joy of the new house gradually faded. Everyone knows that financial difficulties can destroy the relationships of many couples, and Nathan and Michelle were no exception. Realizing the difficult situation of the family, in mid-2009, Nathan volunteered to join the army when the United States was at war with Iraq. He was away for 6 months, and during this time, the family's financial situation improved significantly, which pleased Nathan. While Nathan was risking his life on the battlefield, Michelle was worried and scared about having to take care of 4 children alone. She was used to a stable life and could hardly imagine a different one. To dispel her worries, Michelle found a job at a telemarketing company for corporate credit cards. The job brought variety and new relationships to Michelle's life. She wanted financial independence and did not rule out the possibility of opening her own business in the future. Therefore, she actively developed herself by studying at beauty school. When Nathan was at home, everything went on as usual. However, when he was away, Michelle felt lonely. Having children and her husband's long business trips had cooled their relationship. Michelle longed for affection, so she had an affair with Michael Rudolph Rodriguez, a handsome colleague. However, Michael was a cunning and dishonest man. He had been imprisoned in 2007 for forgery and attempted theft. Michelle could not resist Michael, whom she jokingly called Sweet Rudy, behind his back. At the end of 2009, Nathan returned home. Although it seemed that the distance and challenges had improved the family relationship, in reality, they had not. Michelle was living a double life. She did not want to lose her husband but was still infatuated with Michael. So she tried to please Nathan in every way. Nathan was fascinated by the changes in Michelle's appearance and personality. During his absence, the children had grown up, and their studies were negatively affected. Therefore, he decided to stay with the family for a long time. Because of his pure and loyal nature, Nathan did not think that Michelle's surprising changes could be related to her infidelity. In Las Vegas, Nathan sought to earn extra income by working the night shift for a higher salary in tutoring baseball to children. However, Michelle could no longer hide her dissatisfaction. As their living conditions deteriorated, her attitude became more negative. Over time, their relationship deteriorated beyond repair. On Thanksgiving 2010, Eric and his wife Veronica visited Day. For the first time, Eric noticed a clear tension between Nathan and Michelle. They had changed significantly, and a previous affection seemed to have disappeared. They could not hide their personal and financial difficulties, which were evident in the nearly empty pantry and refrigerator. A week later, on December 1, 2010, Michelle and Michael exchanged suspicious text messages. At 11:12 p.m., Michael texted Michelle, "Hope you're feeling better. Plans for tomorrow are almost complete." 2 minutes later, he texted again, "If you're not feeling well, let me know. I can give you more time. I appreciate your help." At 11:19 p.m., Michelle replied, "My husband just woke me up. He was getting ready to go out, but I thought he would be late today. I'm sorry this plan has caused you trouble." In the months before the tragedy, Michelle had been conflicted about her relationship with Nathan. She did not want to be with him anymore, but she did not want a divorce because she was worried about the financial and emotional consequences. Michelle thought that Nathan would not support her after the breakup, and that the alimony might not be enough to sustain her. In addition, Michelle knew about Nathan's military insurance. If he died, she would receive about $65,000. These thoughts made Michelle feel guilty and uneasy. One day, she shared these thoughts with Michael and was surprised when he showed interest in the matter. Michelle's initial idea about his ex-lover evolved into a more elaborate plan. Michael realized that the plan was too complicated for him and Michelle to carry out alone, so he recruited his friend Corey Alexis Hawkins. Corey, 33, was a mercenary with a criminal record for theft and fraud. With a criminal nature, he agreed to help but demanded a large reward, estimated at $20,000. After careful consideration, Michelle and Michael agreed to this condition. Later, their group was joined by 3 more people: Jessica Austin, 23, Corey's girlfriend, and her friends, Shannon. Shannon was promised 5% of the commission from Corey and Jessica for helping, and this large sum convinced her to join. The original plan was to shoot Nathan in his Chevrolet Tahoe, then drive the car containing the victim's body to an apartment complex parking lot. Jessica was responsible for purchasing essentials such as men's gloves, car covers, and perfume. Shannon would provide an alibi for Michael by confirming he was with her on the day of the murder, if necessary. On December 1, 2010, Michelle reported feeling unwell and came home early at 5:30 p.m., a departure from her usual routine due to her beauty school class finishing late. At around 10:40 p.m., Michelle arrived home, just 5 minutes before Nathan was due to leave for his night shift. Michelle found her husband asleep on the sofa. She woke him up and suggested they go upstairs together. He agreed. That was their last night together. Nathan was rushing downstairs because he was late for work. At the same time, Michelle and Michael were exchanging coded messages to avoid detection. Michael and his accomplice were sitting in a black Cadillac SRX, parked in front of the victim's house. They were wearing rubber gloves to avoid leaving any traces. Michael realizes that Nathan's military training could reduce the chances of his plan succeeding. So he decides to attack from behind. Michael pulls out a pistol and shoots Nathan 5 times in the back. Michael quickly drove out of the garage. At the same time, the criminals fled to a prepared location. There, they burned their clothes in the fireplace and destroyed the remaining evidence. Michael and Shannon then went to a hotel to create an alibi for themselves. Meanwhile, Jessica carefully cleaned up the apartment where they were staying. The police and emergency services were on the scene. They were shocked by the incident, as the Paet family's neighborhood was considered one of the safest and most exemplary. Detective Todd Williams began his investigation of the shooting scene by examining the garage. The garage door was unlocked. When he entered, he smelled a strong odor of iron. Blood was everywhere on the walls, in the car, and on the floor. Next to Nathan's uniform, the detective found his keys and wallet. Since the valuables were still intact, he ruled out the possibility of a robbery and murder. After examining the scene, Detective Laurie Anderson decided to interview his wife, Michelle. Michelle recounted the incident and revealed that the family was having financial difficulties. This information suggested several possibilities to the police. Nathan may have been hiding from his wife about his gambling addiction, debt, or infidelity. These theories could explain why Nathan was attacked. However, the available evidence suggested that Nathan may have been deliberately framed. Police checked his cell phone and found only photos of his wife and children, suggesting that Nathan was a good man. The investigation is ongoing. The next step is to investigate the surrounding neighborhood, as there are often witnesses or people who have heard something. As expected, several neighbors reported seeing a car parked near Nathan's house, driven by a man in a brown sweatshirt. The car left shortly after the gunshots were heard. This information gave detectives an important lead to continue their investigation. Nathan's family was shocked and they heard the news. They took the first flight out of Guam and were waiting for details. Nathan's mother, Carmelita Paet, cried the entire trip, unable to accept that her son had died so soon. When the family arrived at his house, Michelle hugged her mother-in-law and fainted. However, Nathan's mother sensed something was off about her daughter-in-law's reaction. She suspected that Michelle's fainting spell might be faked. Investigators decided to interview Michelle again. They asked her about the car that the witnesses had seen. Surprisingly, she revealed that her co-worker Michael Rodriguez also owned a similar car. Michelle's motive for sharing this information was still unclear. However, thanks to her information, the pieces of the case began to fit together. The police then concluded that either Michelle was lying or the perpetrator's plan was flawed. Investigators looked into Michael's background and discovered that he had a criminal record, which made them even more suspicious. When questioned, Michael remained calm and said that on the evening of Nathan's murder, around 9 p.m., he was shopping at the supermarket. There, he met a girl named Shannon. After chatting for a while, they decided to go to the hotel together at around 11 p.m. To verify Michael's story, the police contacted Shannon. She confirmed that the meeting was real. However, the detective felt that something was wrong, so he decided to check the information on Michelle's phone. Experts recovered text messages exchanged between Michelle and Michael over the past year. The content of their conversations was very suspicious. In particular, on the day Nathan was murdered, they discussed a contract with a man named Corey. This conversation seemed more like a form of encryption than a normal business negotiation. This made the detective suspect that this could be how the murder was planned. Investigators were almost certain that both Michelle and Michael were involved in the case, but due to a lack of conclusive evidence, they released Michael while the investigation continued. After examining Michelle's phone, they called her back for further questioning. Michelle appeared restless and seemed to be hiding something. Realizing that the police knew more than she had anticipated, she decided to reveal her affair with Michael. Michelle eventually confessed that a few months before her husband's death, she and Michael had planned to kill Nathan for insurance money. However, she claimed that she later regretted it and abandoned the idea. It appears that she changed her mind during the preparation of the crime. She felt guilty towards her husband and tried to interfere with the plan by turning off his alarm clock. Michelle believed that her accomplice would not wait or miss Nathan, but investigators did not trust her remorse. Her correspondence suggested otherwise. Furthermore, she sent Michael a smiley face emoji shortly after learning of her husband's death. Shannon later went to the police station to confess. She realized her predicament but attempted to downplay her role in the case. She explained that Michael had forced her to provide an alibi. Jessica had asked her for help, mentioning that her friends wanted to teach a big drug dealer a lesson. Shannon's job was to cover up the involvement of one of the attackers. According to her explanation, it was a way to seek justice. She added that Michael had disclosed the whole truth on the night of the attack. Shannon confirmed to the police that as soon as she realized she had been used, she went to report it. She also feared for her life, not knowing what they would do to her. Her testimony was confirmed by the hotel's security cameras. It was clear that Michael and Shannon arrived at the hotel at 11:40 p.m., not 11 p.m. as Michael had previously stated. Shannon's testimony led detectives to Corey and Jessica. But Corey denied any involvement in the crime. To honor the memory of young Sergeant Nathan, his family and friends held a memorial service on December 7, 2010, at the chapel at Nellis Base. Michelle decided not to attend the service, perhaps because she was not in the mood. Many of Nathan's teammates remembered his endurance and tenacity in the military. The squadron commander spoke of Nathan's outstanding achievements for his country and family. Everyone considered him a trusted teammate and noted his humility and dignity. Beside that, in a speech, Eric recalled, "My brother was always an example to the whole family. He loved life and was devoted to his wife and children. Everything Nathan did was for his country, his love, and his friends." On December 9th, Nathan's remains were returned to Guam. On December 15th, a requiem mass was held at St. Francis Church in Tamining. Sergeant Nathan's funeral was solemnly conducted at the Pity City Cemetery on Guam. The funeral cortege consisted of 36 motorcycles. At the burial site, 6 officers carried the coffin draped with the American flag. Then, a 21-gun salute rang out. Nathan Peet was sent off as a hero. Michael Rodriguez, Corey Hawkins, and Jessica Austin were arrested without bail on December 8, 2010. Michelle Peet was also arrested the following day. Police were concerned about Michelle's mental state and placed her under surveillance to prevent her from committing suicide. On January 4, 2011, all 4 were arraigned in Clark County District Court. They were charged with conspiracy to commit murder, armed robbery, and murder with a firearm. Michael and Corey were also charged with possession of a firearm. The trial lasted 3 years. Several defendants denied any involvement in the case. With the support of strong legal teams, the defendants made several requests to exclude certain evidence from the case. However, the court denied all of these requests, and they were only able to delay the verdict by repeatedly postponing the trial. On September 21, 2015, the trial for the murder of Nathan Peet began. Michael Rudolph Rodriguez, the first suspect to stand trial, pleaded guilty to avoid the death penalty. On September 29, 2015, he was sentenced to life in prison without parole. Michael's appeal was rejected. He showed no emotion upon hearing the verdict and displayed no remorse for his actions. A month later, Michelle Peet appeared in court in Las Vegas. She claimed that she had changed her mind about killing her husband. When allowed to speak, Michelle turned to the victim's parents with tears in her eyes, apologized, and said she loved Nathan and their children. She admitted she was confused and had made a big mistake, then fainted. However, the prosecutor did not believe that Michelle truly wanted to stop the plot to kill her husband. There was substantial evidence that Michelle was more involved in the case than she admitted. It was difficult to understand how a mother of 4 could commit such a heinous crime. The judge sided with the prosecution. Michelle pleaded guilty to conspiracy to commit murder and first-degree murder with a firearm to avoid the death penalty. The victim's family also requested that the death penalty not be imposed. The judge described Michelle's actions as incomprehensible. In October 2015, the third defendant, Corey Alexis Hawkins, also pleaded guilty to avoid the death penalty. He was sentenced to life in prison and his application for parole was denied. The judge found Corey had participated in the planning and had been present at the scene of the shooting. Jessica Austin also reached a plea deal with prosecutors and was convicted of conspiracy to commit murder. In March 2016, Michelle received her final sentence. She once again cited her emotional instability as the cause of her crime and asked Nathan's family for forgiveness. Carmelita Peet, Nathan's mother, was a very religious person, saw that her ex-daughter-in-law was truly remorseful and sorrowful for her actions. Carmelita believed Michelle needed forgiveness and therefore forgave her in court. She added that the most severe punishment Michelle had to endure was that her children did not want to see her anymore. They were afraid she would harm them like she had harmed their father. Eric Peet told Michelle that their family did not want revenge. It seemed that her mother-in-law's words had impacted her. The family would continue to live without her, and the children would grow up knowing their mother was a murderer. Eric's wife, Veronica, also wanted to speak. She expressed her hatred for Michelle and added that she had disgraced her family by pursuing greed and the love of a stranger. Michelle had destroyed her family. She killed the man she deeply loved, the man with whom she shared her life and built a future. Veronica asked if Michelle realized the consequences of her reckless ambition. It was hard to imagine. Such people always chase happiness without appreciating what they have. Nathan devoted his whole life to giving his all, unlike her. He often lacked sleep and took risks with his health and life. Thanks to that sacrifice, Nathan fulfilled his lover's dreams but never received recognition from her. The Paet children will carry lifelong psychological trauma. They will have difficulty building happy families and integrating into society. Hello, crime enthusiasts, are you ready for another chilling investigation? The case of Sherry Papini. Keith Papini and Sherry first met in junior high, when he was in 7th grade and she was in 8th grade. Their friendship quickly blossomed and they remained close throughout their teenage years. However, over time, they lost contact with each other and went separate ways. Sherry eventually moved on and married another man in 2006, but their marriage was short-lived, lasting only 2 years. After her divorce, Sherry found herself single once again. Unbeknownst to her, a chance encounter with Keith was on the horizon, and their reunion would rekindle the spark they had long ago. This unexpected reunion revealed the growth and maturity that time apart had brought them. They discovered how much they had missed each other and decided to give their relationship a second chance. As they started dating, their connection grew stronger with each passing day. Within a year of reuniting, Keith and Sherry realized they were meant to be together. In 2009, they got married and had 2 children, and lived in Reading, California. To care for her children, Sherry left her job in telecommunications, and Keith continued working at Best Buy as a member of the Geek Squad. Keith and Sherry Papini had what seemed like the perfect life to those around them. However, their seemingly idyllic life took a drastic turn on November 2, 2016, when Keith returned home from work to find his wife, Sherry, missing. Normally, Sherry was at home when Keith arrived, but she was nowhere to be found this time. Keith initially thought Sherry might have gone for a walk, but as the minutes ticked by with no sign of her return, his concern grew. He decided to call their children's daycare center to see if Sherry had picked up the kids. To his surprise and concern, the school secretary told him that Sherry had not been there. Keith then decided to track Sherry's phone using the Find My iPhone app. The app showed that her phone was located at the end of their driveway. Keith immediately ran outside and began searching. To his dismay, he found Sherry's phone lying on the ground, along with her headphones. What's more, he discovered strands of hair tangled in the headphones. Distraught, Keith quickly contacted the Shasta County Sheriff's Office. The sheriff's office acted quickly and treated Sherry's disappearance as a serious matter from the very beginning, they bringing in the FBI to assist with the investigation. Keith is determined to find his wife and bring her home safely. To achieve this, he has asked for the public's assistance. Keith contacted the media to help spread the word about Sherry's disappearance, they sharing her story by covering every detail of her case. As a result, the public became deeply interested in Sherry's disappearance, largely due to her striking appearance and the seemingly ideal life she led. As the story gained media attention, the Shasta County Sheriff's Office started receiving numerous tips from the public. However, these information do not assist in finding Sherry. In their investigation, police examined Sherry's phone for clues. Upon reviewing the phone's contents, investigators found a heated text message exchange between Sherry and Keith from a few months earlier. This discovery raised suspicions about Keith's involvement in Sherry's disappearance. Despite these concerns, Keith cooperated with the police investigation and even volunteered to take a polygraph test to clear his name. The test results showed that Keith was telling the truth. Aside from the text message exchange between Keith and Sherry, investigators found several messages on Sherry's phone from men using fake female names. Further examination suggested that Sherry was preparing to leave Keith. On November 10, 2016, the police located one of these men and questioned him about Sherry's location. He reported meeting Sherry 5 years prior at a restaurant during a work event. although he claimed to have no knowledge of her whereabouts. He did offer some insight into her marriage to Keith. He shared that she had confided in him about her fear of her husband, Keith, due to his violent behavior. He claimed Keith often confined Sherry to their home. The police opened an investigation into Keith's behavior to verify these allegations. However, after questioning friends and neighbors, they found no concrete evidence supporting Keith's portrayal as a violent person. Friends of the couple shared a different perspective. They described Sherry as attention-seeking and has a tendency to overreact. This new information led the police to consider that Sherry might have exaggerated or fabricated about being abused by her husband. On Thanksgiving morning, just days after Sherry went missing, police received a call for help at 4:32 a.m. The caller reported a woman on the side of I-5 who seemed to need assistance. Officers quickly are present to the scene and found a woman bound by chains and zip ties. Due to her disheveled state, it took a moment for them to identify the woman as Sherry. The officers were relieved to find Sherry alive. They carefully removed her chains and zip ties to ensure her safety. After her release, the officers took Sherry to the hospital for medical attention. It was at the hospital that the full extent of Sherry's ordeal became clear. She had multiple bruises, her hair had been cut short, and she had a burn mark on her arm. Additionally, she had a severe rash and had lost a significant amount of weight, dropping to just 87 pounds. Sherry was interviewed at Woodland Memorial Hospital while recovering, but she was too distraught to share any details without her husband present. Her husband, Keith, was allowed to stay with her during the interview. According to Sherry, she was jogging when a dark-colored SUV approached. The vehicle was driven by two women. The older woman, who had a gun, got out of the car and approached Sherry, while the younger woman stayed in the vehicle. Sherry stated she was forced into the SUV. Before getting in, Sherry left her phone, headphones, and some of her hair behind in the driveway. She intentionally left clues for Keith in case anything went wrong. During the journey in the SUV, Sherry said she drifted in and out of sleep, making it difficult to keep track of time. The women also covered Sherry's face, preventing her from seeing the direction or location she was being taken. Sherry reported that her captors, two women, told her that she was taken because a man wanted to buy her. However, the women did not provide any information about the man's identity or his location. As a result, Sherry felt unease and fear, unsure of where she was being taken or what would happen to her during her captivity. During her testimony, Sherry also claimed to have experienced physical abuse from one of the captors. She alleged that this woman physically hit her many times, causing various injuries. She stated that she was branded on her right shoulder with the word Exodus, which would reportedly make her more appealing to her buyer. Sherry's captors played Mexican mariachi music constantly, of discomfort for Sherry. Throughout her captivity, Sherendra was confined to a small room with boarded-up window. Sherry described the basic but unsanitary and uncomfortable living conditions. In the closet, where she was chained, there was a bucket for her to use for both bowel movements and urination. Approximately 3 weeks after being in captivity, Sherry heard the sound of a gunshot. After that, she never saw the older Hispanic woman again. The other captor, who had been known to remain silent, now communicated more and ordered Sherry into a car, then driven along Interstate I-5. Car suddenly came to a stop, catching Sherry off guard. Startled, she looked around, and was then instructed by kidnapper to exit the vehicle. Sherry carefully got out of the car, feeling both frightened and hopeful. Was this her chance to escape, or was she being led into a more dangerous situation? Without any clear answers, she was left with deep uncertainty. After Sherry's rescue from the side of Interstate 5, the Shasta County Sheriff's Office held a press conference to announce her safe return. During the conference, authorities revealed that Sherry had been abducted by 2 Hispanic women. Unfortunately, This has sparked a wave of racism against Hispanics. In the aftermath of her abduction, Sherry began attending therapy sessions to cope with her ordeal. Fortunately, as a California resident, she became eligible for the Victims' Compensation Fund, which uses state budget to help pay for victims' therapy in the aftermath of the abduction. Sherry has changed her life, giving up her outgoing personality and limiting her social interactions. She now spends most of her time indoors, instead of participating in many of the social activities she once enjoyed. The police released a composite sketch of 2 Hispanic women suspected to be involved in Sherry's abduction about a year into the investigation. However, no new information or leads were received. The police also disclosed that they found male DNA on Sherry's underwear, the same one she was wearing when she was found on the side of the I-5. Authorities confirmed that the DNA did not belong to Sherry's husband, Keith. 2 years after her abduction, the police were still unable to find a match for the male DNA on Sherry's underwear. And the case remained unresolved. In 2020, a significant development took place in the investigation of Sherry's case. The police responsible for her case applied for approval to utilize a new technology called familial DNA analysis, which involves examining DNA profiles to pinpoint possible relatives of the person who contributed the DNA. Familial DNA testing is a crucial tool in solving crimes. It works by comparing DNA evidence to the DNA of known individuals, usually family members of a suspect, to see if there's a match. To aid in the investigation, researchers use genetic markers shared among relatives to narrow down the pool of suspects. In the Sherry Papini case, the police have found new clues when they matched male DNA found on her underwear to family member James Reyes, Sherry's ex-boyfriend. This unexpected result led to numerous questions and changed the direction of the investigation. As a result, the police began to suspect Sherry's ex-boyfriend of being involved in her abduction. To investigate further, the police collected a soda bottle from James's trash and sent it to the forensic lab for DNA analysis in June 2020. The lab then compared the DNA from the soda bottle to the DNA sample found on Sherry's underwear. 1 month later, the lab confirmed that James Reyes was a match to the DNA sample discovered on Sherry's panties the day she was found. The police interviewed James at his home in Costa Mesa, California, about the disappearance of his former girlfriend, Sherry. James stated that he had dated Sherry about 10 years ago and last saw her a year after their breakup. When asked if he was involved in her kidnapping, James initially denied any involvement. However, as the interview progressed, James revealed that he was still close friends with Sherry. He said he was involved in Sherry's disappearance but didn't kidnap her. Instead, he just helped her. According to James, Sherry had contacted him about escaping her abusive husband, Keith. To help her, James arranged for a car, which was rented by one of his friends on November 2, 2016. James used that vehicle to pick up Sherry the next day. Sherry stayed in the back seat of the car during the long drive to James' house in Costa Mesa, lying down the entire time. Once they arrived, Sherry isolated herself in the bedroom for the remainder of her stay. James continued with his daily routine, while Sherry occasionally helped out by cleaning and cooking. During her stay, Sherry started dieting to lose weight. She also asked James to help her harm herself on purpose. Her requests included creating bruises by hitting herself. Sherry asked James to hit her knee with a hockey puck. At first, James was hesitant, but he eventually agreed to her requests. Furthermore, James stated that Sherry asked him to brand the word Exodus onto her right shoulder using a wood-burning tool from Hobby Lobby. James admitted to complying with this request as well. Eventually, Sherry informed James that she had decided to leave his house. Before departing, she requested that James obtain chains and zip ties. Sherry then instructed James drove her back to Redding, California. During the drive, Sherry ordered James to pull over, and he complied. She immediately exited the vehicle, and James drove away. When questioned by the police, James claimed he had no knowledge of the incident Sherry described, involving two Hispanic women. However, when the police visited James's house, they were startled by what they found. The layout of several rooms matched the descriptions Sherry had provided, including James' bedroom and closet, which exactly matched a drawing Sherry had created for the police. Several days later, the police met with Sherry and Keith at the police station. During the interview, the police had evidence that suggested Sherry had faked her own kidnapping, and they were prepared to confront her about it. Before revealing the truth, they asked Sherry if she wanted her husband Keith to leave the room. However, Sherry remained silent. The police decided to leave Sherry and Keith alone for a few minutes. During this time, Sherry shared a secret with Keith. Sherry told her husband that she didn't want the police to find the Hispanic woman who kidnapped her because she felt grateful to the woman for letting her go. As a result, she had no intention of pressing charges against the woman. Keith listened to his wife's explanation but became concerned and scared as her words made no sense to him. He pointed out that even if Sherry chose not to press charges, the woman would still face consequences for her actions. The police then re-entered the room and shared a crucial piece of information. They had obtained a DNA match for the male DNA found on Sherry's clothing. That DNA belongs to James Reyes, his wife's ex-boyfriend. Then, the police informed Sherry and Keith that James had passed a polygraph test, suggesting James was telling the truth. The police believed that Sherry might have faked her abduction, and they claimed to have gathered evidence supporting James' version of what happened. According to the police, they also told Sherry that they had discovered information that suggested her weight loss during her disappearance was intentional. Additionally, they believed the rash on her arms could have been caused by the cleaning products she used at James's home. The investigation into Sherry's kidnapping progressed when police discovered that she had staged the incident. The police found evidence that James had indeed inflicted the injuries on Sherry, on her own accord, contradicting her claim that she hadn't seen him since their breakup years ago. Specifically, police claimed to have discovered that James had used a wooden object purchased from Hobby Lobby to brand Sherry. They also discovered that Sherry's broken nose was the result of self-inflicted injuries with a hockey stick. Despite this damning evidence, Sherry continued to deny any involvement in her disappearance. However, James provided the police with details about Sherry's disappearance that only someone with insider knowledge would know. Consequently, on March 3, 2022, Sherry was arrested by the FBI for lying to federal agents and faking her own abduction. 6 weeks later, she agreed to plead guilty to these charges as part of a plea deal with federal prosecutors. In the subsequent sentencing, Sherry's defense team requested a lenient sentence of 1 month in prison and 7 months of home detention. However, the prosecution recommended a more severe 18-month sentence. Ultimately, the court sentenced Sherry to 18 months in prison and ordered her to pay a $300,000 fine in September 2022, accepting the prosecution's recommendation. During her sentencing, the judge described she as manipulative and dishonest. At the sentencing hearing, Sherry apologized to those who had been affected by her actions and acknowledged her guilt. She took responsibility for her dishonesty and the harm it had caused to herself and others. Sherry was released from prison in August 2023 and placed in a halfway house. Her relationship with Keith ended on the day of her arrest in March 2022, when Keith learned the truth about her actions. Shortly after Sherry's guilty plea, Keith filed for divorce and sought full custody of their children. Welcome back, mystery lovers. Today's case is going to keep you on the edge of your seat. The case of Susan Wright. Susan Wright was born on April 24, 1976 in Houston, Texas. Her parents, Velma Sue and Jimmy Lawrence Wright, lived a simple life and raised Susan and her older sister, Cindy. From a young age, Susan was an active, friendly, and talented child. During her school years, she participated in dancing activities and aspired to become a professional choreographer. With her bright and attractive appearance, Susan had many fans. However, after graduating from high school, Susan's dream of becoming a student did not come true. But she did not give up, and after a short break, she saved money to continue her studies. For a long time, Susan worked as a dancer at a famous nightclub in the city. However, she soon realized that this job was not for her and decided to leave. She then used her savings to study nursing at night at a university. With the goal of becoming independent, Susan balanced her studies with a job as a waitress at a restaurant to support herself. However, after a while, Susan realized that a career in medicine was not the right path for her and paying for her tuition became difficult. Therefore, Susan decided to drop out of school and focus on her work. In 1997, Susan met Jeffrey Wright at the Galveston restaurant where she worked. She was 21 years old at the time and Jeffrey went to the restaurant for a meal. From then on, their romantic relationship began. Jeffrey was immediately attracted to the blue-eyed blonde's beauty and bright smile. He left a generous tip and became a regular customer. Finally, he mustered up the courage to ask for Susan's phone number. Susan recalls that Jeffrey began calling her every day, sometimes multiple times a day. Jeffrey arranged romantic dates and small surprises like sending flowers and touching notes to Susan's workplace. In the evenings, Jeffrey would meet her and take her home. Although Jeffrey was 8 years older than her, the age gap did not bother them. Jeffrey was attentive, sweet, and caring, and quickly won Susan's heart. However, Jeffrey had some problems with alcohol and substance abuse. Jeffrey said that he had given up drugs and promised to give up drinking completely. Susan, a naive young girl, believed him. Susan felt that together they could overcome any challenge. Shortly after Susan learned she was pregnant, she immediately shared the news with Jeffrey. Although Jeffrey initially expressed joy at the prospect of becoming a father, he had not made any decisions about the future. Jeffrey did not propose and they continued to live apart. Disturbed by Jeffrey's behavior, Susan insisted that their first child be born, and Jeffrey accepted her opinion. At the time of the marriage license, Susan was 8 months pregnant. Their wedding was a simple affair, with no guests or witnesses. A few weeks before the baby was due, they moved into a quiet house in Harris County, Texas. In December 1998, Susan gave birth to a son named Bradley. Just 3 years later, she was pregnant again. In the spring of 2002, she welcomed her second daughter, named Kay. Along the shore, the family also raised a small dog named Buck and had a spacious family car. Jeffrey worked for a local construction company, and after they had a daughter named Kay, Jeffrey agreed that Susan would stay home to care for the child. Friendly neighbors often praised Susan as a kind and caring mother. She created a cozy environment for the family. From the outside, it seemed like the perfect family. Every day, Susan has to spend a lot of time doing housework such as cleaning, organizing, cooking, and making sure everything is kept in a clean condition. Jeffrey does not want her to repeat the same recipes. The whole house has to be clean for Susan. Taking care of young children and cleaning the house at the same time can be considered impossible. Jeffrey's clothes have to be washed almost every day because he doesn't want to wear any of the same clothes again. However, following these rules manually is not easy. If Susan doesn't comply with his request, she will face insults, humiliation, and even physical abuse. Financially, Jeffrey is extremely frugal. Contrary to the image of a romantic man who often gives gifts and flowers, Jeffrey only gives Susan $100 a week to cover household expenses. At the same time, he also asked her to settle all expenses and provide receipts. Jeffrey also broke his earlier promise to quit drinking. However, the real problems were just beginning. Jeffrey relapsed and started using drugs again. Under the influence of these substances, Jeffrey would become aggressive and would hurt his wife and son. Whenever Susan asked Jeffrey to stop using drugs and go to rehab, Jeffrey responded with anger. Jeffrey saw no problem with his actions and believed that Susan knew about Jeffrey's drug and alcohol use before Susan married him, so she should accept it and live with it. Jeffrey's parents also knew their son's weakness and sympathized with Susan. However, they felt helpless and unable to help her. What Susan couldn't stand, however, was when her husband began to physically, emotionally, and even sexually abuse her. At first, he would apologize and promise not to do it again, but then he stopped apologizing and domestic violence became a daily occurrence. Jeffrey began boxing at the gym 3 times a week, finding that the sessions helped him relieve stress. On Monday, January 13, 2003, Jeffrey went to the gym after work as usual. When he returned home, he seemed stressed. While Susan was cooking dinner, Jeffrey decided to tell his son about the sport of boxing and teach him some basic techniques. While teaching his son boxing, Jeffrey lost control and hit the boy. The child burst into tears, and Jeffrey tried to comfort the child, hoping his wife wouldn't hear. Susan pretended not to notice, but this incident was the last straw for Susan. After dinner, Susan went to put the children to bed while Jeffrey remained in the bedroom. When Susan entered the room, Jeffrey attacked her violently. Susan thought that Jeffrey was trying to kill her with a knife. However, she reacted and realized that Jeffrey did not have a knife in his hand. Susan decided to use her dancing skills to seduce Jeffrey and lower his guard. Susan entered the room in a short silk robe and performed the dance for her husband. Susan then proposed a game, which Jeffrey agreed to participate in. In this game, Susan used 3 reins to tie Jeffrey's right hand and right leg to the bed. Jeffrey's left leg was secured with a silk strip from her robe. While Jeffrey was tied up, Susan used her panties to spank him, forming part of the intimate game. Susan gently turned off the lights. Jeffrey was now bound hand and foot, and a gag was stuffed into his mouth. The din candles were the only remaining light. Susan then moved the bubbling hot wax onto Jeffrey's chest. Susan then continued pouring the hot wax onto his genitals, and the pain quickly became unbearable. Jeffrey tried to free himself, tried to scream, but to no avail. Meanwhile, Susan continued to beat Jeffrey with a small, sharp knife she had taken from the kitchen. Susan started at the groin area, moving up and down, cutting Jeffrey's genitals, legs, stomach, chest, arms, neck, and face. At first, Susan moved slowly, complaining loudly with each slash, recounting the insults, humiliations, and abuse she had endured. Then Susan began to cry and stabbed faster and faster. Her actions showed that Susan was in a state of extreme despair and emotional turmoil. Susan could not stop even when Jeffrey showed no signs of life. Susan sat by the bed next to Jeffrey's body. However, after a few hours, Susan realized that the bedroom was covered in blood and she had to clean it up before morning. Susan carefully watched the window, making sure no neighbors were watching. At this point, Susan saw a hole in the backyard, which Jeffrey had dug over the weekend to build a fountain. Susan quickly moved Jeffrey's body from the bedroom to the yard, using a garden wheelbarrow to move it. Susan decided that the pool would be Jeffrey's final resting place. After calming down, Susan spent the rest of the day, before dawn, cleaning up the evidence of the attack. Susan had to wash the blood off the floors, walls, and carpets. The carpets had large stains that could not be removed. Susan added bleach to the stains, hoping that the chemicals would erase any traces of what had happened in the room. That morning, Susan called her husband's family in Austin, Texas, sobbing. Susan told them that her husband Jeffrey, while drinking and using drugs, had attacked Susan and their young son. Jeffrey then destroyed the house, spilling a bottle of bleach on the carpet before leaving, declaring that Jeffrey did not want to continue the marriage. When Jeffrey's parents heard that Jeffrey had been beating their son, they were shocked. They knew Jeffrey wasn't perfect, and they felt sorry for Susan. They offered to let Susan and the children stay at their house for a while, but Susan refused. Instead, Susan said she would file a police report and tell them everything that had happened in the family. Then, when Jeffrey suddenly went missing, Jeffrey's mother, Mrs. Wright, went to the police station to report the incident. Susan said Jeffrey had been violent towards Susan and the children. As a result, Susan had to file for a restraining order, which meant that Jeffrey would not be allowed near Susan and the children. When Susan filed for the restraining order, Susan presented evidence of her injuries, such as bruises and cuts on her arms. Susan said the injuries were caused by Jeffrey during a fight when he hit her with a key. Susan's children were also victims, especially Bradley, who was hit by his father and had minor bruises on his face. At first glance, the story told by Susan seemed plausible. Jeffrey, under the influence of alcohol and drugs, attacked Susan and her young son, after which Jeffrey became frightened and ran away. But over time, Jeffrey stopped communicating. And Jeffrey fled without taking his belongings, papers, and even his cell phone from home. Jeffrey did not go to work or to his parents' house, and none of his friends or neighbors saw Jeffrey. It was as if he had disappeared into thin air. Susan's situation is not optimistic, as she finds it unbearable to be in the house where Susan murdered Jeffrey and buried his body in the yard. Susan begins to feel as if Jeffrey is still alive and about to rise from the grave to take revenge. Susan is on the verge of going crazy, and their dog Buck keeps barking and trying to dig up the burial site. On January 17th, after dropping her children off at school, Susan went to her mother Velma's house. Her mother learned about the incident and asked Susan, "You killed your husband, didn't you?" Susan burst into tears and nodded. Susan confessed what had happened and revealed where Susan had hidden Jeffrey's body, saying she didn't know what to do next. On her mother's advice, Susan contacted attorney Neil Davis the next day and confessed that Susan had killed her husband. Attorney Davis worked out a solution and thought carefully about possible scenarios. On January 19th, Neil Davis called the Harris County District Attorney's office and reported that Susan Wright had killed her husband Jeffrey and buried his body in the backyard. Susan Wright was ready to give a statement to the police. On January 24, 2003, Susan voluntarily went to the police and stated that she would give a full confession. On January 24, 2003, Susan went to the police and confessed the whole thing. However, when she was interviewed, Susan's story was unclear and full of contradictions. Susan was confused about the details and sometimes contradicted herself. Susan also claimed that Jeffrey was still alive and that she was afraid of him. As a result, Susan requested protection. As a result, Susan underwent a psychological evaluation and was diagnosed with schizophrenia and depression. However, Susan was still able to understand her actions. Following Susan's statement, the police arrived at the scene and removed Jeffrey's body from the makeshift grave in the backyard. The medical examiner was surprised to see numerous injuries on the body. The medical examiner's team counted a total of 193 stab wounds on the body. Specifically, there were 8 wounds in the groin area, about 30 wounds in the legs, 23 wounds in the shoulders and arms, 22 wounds in the abdomen, 46 wounds in the arms, 23 wounds in the neck, and 41 wounds in the face. However, only 1 wound to the head could be considered the direct cause of death. All other cuts were superficial and did not pose an immediate threat to life. This left Jeffrey with a long and painful death. Police saw deep marks on Jeffrey's wrists and ankles from the ropes and belt Susan used to restrain him. These injuries indicated that Jeffrey had tried to free himself but was unsuccessful. Additionally, traces of candle wax were found on Jeffrey's gun and groin area. Susan claimed that it was an accident as her husband accidentally turned a burning candle on himself, but police believe the hot wax was more likely a form of torture inflicted on Jeffrey to cause pain. Susan's underwear was still in Jeffrey's mouth, acting as a gag to prevent Jeffrey from screaming or calling for help. Toxicology reports revealed traces of alcohol and several controlled substances in Jeffrey's system, suggesting that Jeffrey may have acted aggressively under the influence of these substances. The bedroom where the massacre took place appeared normal, except for a large bleach stain on the carpet, suggesting that Susan had spent a lot of time cleaning and hiding the evidence. When experts used chemicals and special equipment to detect the blood traces that had been cleaned up, a completely different view of the project emerged. Blood was found everywhere, including on the ceiling and the red blood cell cushion. The trial began in late February 2004. By that time, Susan had been in custody for a year and her children were in the care of her parents and sister Cindy. Susan's attorney had prepared extensively for the trial and worked extensively with Susan. When questioned, Susan recounted the sad story of that terrible night and the events leading up to it. Susan said she had endured years of abuse and resistance. However, when Jeffrey began abusing the children, Susan could not take it anymore. Susan recounted that fateful evening, Jeffrey came home from the gym in a state of agitation. Jeffrey then began teaching their 5-year-old son punching and fighting techniques. When the son became scared and refused, Jeffrey punched him in the face. Susan then put the child to bed and decided to talk to Jeffrey about seeking help at a clinic for alcohol and drug abuse. However, Jeffrey became angry and decided to leave, taking the keys with him. While Susan tried to stop Jeffrey, a fight broke out between the two, leaving Susan with injuries to her palm and wrist. During the attack, Jeffrey attacked her, causing her to fall to the floor and briefly lose consciousness. When Susan regained consciousness, she found Jeffrey holding a knife in his hand. Susan could not explain how the knife ended up in her hand afterward. Susan's attorney argued that Susan's mental instability was the cause of her actions, causing Susan to lose control of her attacks until she had inflicted multiple injuries on Jeffrey. Susan said she tied the rope and belt around Jeffrey's hands after inflicting multiple injuries, then used a wheelbarrow to carry Jeffrey out into the yard. As for the scraps found, Susan claimed they came from a candle that Susan had left on her bedside table that night when she had left the nightlight on. Susan could not explain why her underwear appeared in Jeffrey's mouth. The prosecution's argument and conclusion were more convincing and reasonable. Experts demonstrated that the deep wounds and abrasions on Jeffrey's wrists and ankles were inflicted while he was still alive, indicating that the binding was part of an intimate game that Susan used to lure Jeffrey into a trap. Therefore, it was reasonable that Susan's underwear had replaced the gag in Jeffrey's mouth. Furthermore, all of the wounds were inflicted at a certain angle, as if Susan were on top of Jeffrey's body, sitting on him, rather than in the midst of a struggle, which would have resulted in a different type of injury. All of the cuts were made from the front while Jeffrey was lying on his back and firmly immobilized. The question remains whether Susan planned Jeffrey's death. The prosecution claims that Susan planned the whole thing in hopes of receiving a large insurance payout. The case was widely publicized as Susan was dubbed the blue-eyed butcher or the blonde meat grinder by the press. Jeffrey's relatives demanded the harshest punishment for Susan. At first, people asked for a life sentence for Susan. However, in March 2004, Susan was convicted and sentenced to 25 years in prison. Susan did not think about the judge's decision and was completely emotionless. A year later, Susan's attorneys attempted to appeal the conviction, but it was denied. With new developments and a reduced sentence in 2008, Susan and her defense team filed another appeal. This time, a new witness testimony significantly affected the outcome of the case. Misty McKell, wife of former NFL champion Steve McKell, had a close relationship with Jeffrey Wright in the mid-1990s and was even engaged to Jeffrey for a year. However, Misty McKell shared horrific experiences of being physically and mentally abused by Jeffrey, causing her to abandon plans for marriage and end the relationship permanently. After considering Misty McKell's testimony, Susan's sentence was reduced to 20 years. In 2014, when she was 38 years old, Susan was eligible for parole once but was denied. Susan was also denied a second time in July 2017. Finally, after 16 years in prison, Susan was released in the winter of 2020 when she was 44 years old. Susan Wright's case was widely covered in the media and aired on the U.S. national television network Court TV. The story was later made into several popular television documentaries, including 48 Hours Mystery and The Secret Lives of Stepford Wives. In 2012, the feature film Blue-Eyed Butcher was released, starring actress Sarah Paxton as Susan Wright. Additionally, in 2014, Canadian documentary filmmaker Chloe Ballant discovered a short film inspired by Susan Wright's trial. Hello again, true crime fans. We've got another mysterious case to explore. The case of Paet family. The Paet family was viewed as a model family due to their stable economic background and well-behaved children, earning them genuine admiration from those around them. William Paet, the father, was a standout athlete in high school, particularly in basketball, where he demonstrated natural leadership skills. He was also the top student in his class, going on to earn a law degree from Dartmouth University. However, William's true passion lay in helping others, caring for the sick, and making a positive impact on the social. After completing his law degree, he decided to pursue a career in medicine at the University of Pittsburgh. It was during his third year of residency at the Children's Hospital of Pittsburgh that William met Jennifer Hawk, a nurse specializing in oncology and co-director of the Health Center for a pre-graduate internship program. They fell deeply in love, with those who knew them confirming that they were perfectly suited for each other. The couple got married in 1985. 4 years later, they had their first daughter, Haley. Her birth inspired them to have a large family, which prompted them to purchase a house in Cheshire, Connecticut. On November 17, 1995, their second daughter, Michaela, was born. Following childbirth, Jennifer resumed her work as a nurse and internship co-director. However, she was later diagnosed with multiple sclerosis, a chronic disease with no cure that would follow her for the rest of her life. Her family remained supportive throughout. At 10 years old, Haley started raising money for the Multiple Sclerosis Society, generating significant funds over time. Michaela also performed well academically. And when Haley went to college, Michaela planned to take over the fundraising efforts so she could continue supporting their community. The summer before, Michaela had learned to cook and she enjoyed preparing meals for her family. Tragically, this daily activity leads the family to an encounter with a criminal. One July evening in 2007, Michaela was preparing dinner, but she needed additional ingredients. She and her mother went to the nearest market, where they coincidentally encountered Joshua Komisarjevsky, a man recently released from prison. Joshua had experienced a traumatic and complicated childhood. He was born to teenage parents. He was put up for adoption a week after birth and adopted by the Komisarjevsky family, renowned artists in Europe known for their strict and religious upbringing. Joshua had a high IQ, but struggled in school, prompting his parents to decide that homeschooling was a better option. During his trial, Joshua revealed that he had been sexually abused by a cousin in his childhood, but his family chose not to address the issue. This traumatic experience contributed to the development of his rebellious personality. At the age of 14, Joshua was accused of abusing his sister. Around the same time, he committed his first burglary. In 2002, he was arrested for 18 charges of burglary and resulting in a 9-year prison sentence. During the trial, he gave a chilling confession, revealing that he enjoyed invading other people's private space, enjoyed the feeling of being close to them while they slept, and found particular satisfaction in making others feel insecure. Released on parole in 2007 at the age of 27, officials deemed Joshua a danger to society, describing him as a perverted individual and disturbing behavior. Despite these warnings, the jury declared him fit for release. Following his release, Joshua stayed in a residence for ex-convicts, where he met his accomplice, Stephen Hayes. Hayes had spent a significant portion of his life in prison, starting with his first incarceration at the age of 16 in 1980. He was frequently arrested for violent robbery and burglary, and after being sentenced in 2004, he was granted parole in 2006, which led him to the same halfway house where he met Joshua. On July 22, 2007, Joshua trailed Michaela Paet and her mother as they traveled to a nearby market to purchase. He paid close attention to and noted specific details about Michaela's vehicle, facial features, and blonde hair. After completing their shopping, Michaela and her mother returned home, having no knowledge that Joshua had been following them. Later, Hayes sent Joshua a text message indicating he was impatient to start and needed a drink soon. Hayes asked if their plan was still on, to which Joshua confirmed to be yes. When Hayes asked how much longer he had to wait, Joshua told him he was busy putting his child to bed and advised Hayes to be patient. Hayes responded by expressing his eagerness to proceed. Meanwhile, Joshua secretly follows the Paet family in his car to find out the exact location of their house. The whole family was enjoying a nice dinner together, but they unaware that it would be the last time they would all be together. Later that night, while everyone was asleep except for William Paet, who had dozed off in the living room, their peace was disrupted by strange noises inside the house. William remembered feeling groggy, in pain, and unable to think clearly. Joshua and Hayes had entered the house through an unlocked door, initially planning to rob the family. However, upon finding a baseball bat, they used it to brutally beat William, who remained conscious despite the assault. One of the intruders threatened to shoot him if he moved. William was then restrained with ropes, tied to a pole in the basement. Joshua and Haley proceeded upstairs to Haley's room, where they found her sleeping. They tied Haley and Michaela to their bedposts, covering their heads with pillowcases. Meanwhile, in the master bedroom, Jennifer Paet had fallen asleep, but was soon woken up by Joshua and Hayes. They controlled Jennifer by tying her hands and feet, feeling that they now had control of the house. Joshua and Hayes then took their time to thoroughly inspect the house, and even stopped to smoke cigarettes in the living room. After collecting valuables such as jewelry, cash, Joshua and Hayes decided it was time to leave. It seemed the Paet family's ordeal was finally over as they heard the burglars leave the house. However, their nightmare was far from over. Joshua and Hayes sold the items at a pawn shop, but after realizing they hadn't made as much money as they expected, their greed drove them to return to the house. When they returned to the Paet house, they discovered a check register with $40,000 and decided to steal a total of $155,000. Once back, they informed Jennifer of their plan, threatening to kill her entire family if she didn't comply. Desperate and prioritizing her daughter's safety, Jennifer reluctantly agreed to accompany Hayes to the bank the next morning. Meanwhile, Joshua took advantage of Jennifer's absence to enter Michaela's room. He untied Michaela, undressed her, and took photos with his cell phone. He assaulted her, recording the act. Afterward, Joshua took her to the bathroom to clean her, aiming to eliminate any DNA evidence. He ordered her to put her pajamas back on and tied her up again. The evidence that Joshua raped Michaela was found during her autopsy. State Medical Examiner Dr. Wayne Carver discovered Joshua's DNA in Michaela's body. At the bank, everything initially seemed to go smoothly. However, Hayes failed to notice Jennifer's actions while she was in line. Before approaching the teller, Jennifer wrote a note on a flyer asking for help. The note read that her name was Jennifer Paet, she needed to withdraw $115,000 from her savings account, and that her family was in danger, so Jennifer asked them to call the police, or her family would be killed. The teller gave Jennifer the money despite her lack of identification. With the cash, Jennifer left the bank and returned to the car with Hayes. The bank employee immediately called the police to report the incident. However, the manager told the 911 dispatcher that Jennifer had indicated the home invaders were being nice and only wanted money. Cheshire police received a report from the bank and they set up a vehicle perimeter around the area without alerting the suspect. From a distance, the police observed the situation without intervening. Meanwhile, back at the house, Joshua told his accomplice about his actions towards Michaela, implying that he could easily harm Jennifer as well. Hayes then grabbed Jennifer, pinned her to the ground, and started removing her clothes. William heard his wife being assaulted upstairs and managed to flee. One of the intruders responded, "Don't worry, it's all going to be over in a couple of minutes." William crawled to the basement stairs and eventually made it to the backyard. William thought the intruders would shoot them all soon, so he knew he had to act fast. Joshua checked on William but found he had escaped. According to Hayes' confession, Joshua told Hayes that William had gotten away while Hayes was raping Jennifer in the living room. Upon hearing this, Hayes strangled Jennifer to death while continuing to assault her. Shortly after, they heard William shouting for help. A neighbor, who initially didn't recognize William due to his injuries, immediately called 911. Realizing the police would arrive soon, Joshua and Hayes tried to eliminate evidence. Hayes and Joshua doused Jennifer's lifeless body, various parts of the house including Michaela and Haley's bedroom, and also Michaela and Haley themselves with gasoline. Hayes and Joshua started a fire at the scene, unaware that the police had blocked off the area just a few miles away. Within 5 minutes, they collided with a police vehicle and were surrounded by officers. The two perpetrators, Joshua and Hayes, who were later identified as ex-convicts, were pulled from their vehicle and arrested. Meanwhile, the fire at the house was spreading rapidly. An ambulance arrived and took William Paet, who was seriously injured, to the nearest hospital. Firefighters soon followed and attempted to put out the blaze. Once the fire was extinguished, they discovered a horrific scene inside the house. The first body they found was Jennifer's, which was badly charred and had rope around her ankles. On the second floor, they found Michaela tied to her bed, her body completely consumed by the fire. In a desperate bid to escape, Haley had managed to break free restraints but collapsed just a few meters away due to smoke inhalation. William had also managed to free himself and crawled to a neighbor's yard for help, but the neighbor didn't initially recognize him due to the severity of his injuries. Both Joshua and Hayes admitted to the murders during questioning. Detectives noticed that Hayes smelled of gasoline throughout her interrogation. However, each attacker claimed the other was the main person responsible for planning the home invasion. Joshua also accused William of being responsible for the murders. In his diary, Joshua referred to William as a coward, stating that William had the opportunity to save his family but chose not to. The trial of Hayes started on September 13, 2010, with a jury of 12 people, consisting of 7 women and 5 men. The defense team argued that Joshua was the mastermind behind the crime and was responsible for making it more brutal. On the other hand, the prosecutors believed that both Hayes and Joshua were equally responsible. After about 5 hours of discussion, the jury found Hayes guilty on October 5. The sentencing phase began on October 18, but the jury was initially torn between recommending life imprisonment or the death penalty. Hayes' defense team argued that life imprisonment without parole would be a harsher punishment. However, on November 8, the jury decided to recommend the death sentence for Hayes. Before the trial, Hayes had tried to negotiate a plea bargain for a life sentence, but the prosecutors wanted the death penalty. On December 2, 2010, Hayes apologized for the pain he caused the Paet family. He stated that death would be a welcome relief and hoped it would bring some peace to those he hurt. Judge John Blue sentenced Hayes to 6 death sentences and 106 additional years for other crimes. However, when Connecticut abolished capital punishment in 2015, Hayes' death sentence was changed to life imprisonment. The trial of Joshua Komisarjevsky began on September 19, 2011. His lawyers offered a guilty plea in exchange for a life sentence, but prosecutors sought the death penalty. They argued that Hayes was the one who directed Joshua. Joshua was found guilty on October 13, 2011, and the jury recommended the death penalty on December 9, 2011. During Joshua's sentencing, he expressed remorse and shame for the crime, claiming he never intended to kill anyone. The judge set an execution date of July 20, 2012, holding Joshua accountable for his actions. However, in August 2015, his death sentence was commuted to life imprisonment after Connecticut abolished capital punishment. William Paet, the lone survivor of his family, was released from the hospital after 4 days. Upon his discharge, he immediately attended the funeral service for his wife and daughters. Overwhelmed with guilt and grief, William struggled to come to terms with the devastating reality that his loved ones were truly gone forever. Hey detectives! Welcome back. We've got another mysterious case to explore. The case of Michael Wayne Jones. Michael Wayne Jones was born on May 1, 1981, in Brattleboro, Vermont. His life was complicated and difficult from a young age. Michael witnessed his parents repeatedly physically and mentally abusing each other, and he himself was also subjected to this abuse. When Michael was young, his father went to prison for unclear reasons, leaving him feeling empty and deeply affected. His mother remarried and had another son, Dana, bringing some happiness to Michael's life. However, their home life remained troubled. Michael's stepfather had trouble maintaining stable employment, which put a financial strain on his mother, forcing her to work 2 jobs to support the family. The stepfather was aggressive toward Michael and Dana. He used physical punishment. This has created an atmosphere that makes people feel scared and controlled. Michael was harshly punished for small mistakes, such as being late to school, and was often locked in a shed and subjected to sexual abuse. Michael's difficult life did not harden him. Instead, he showed kindness and a strong instinct to protect others, particularly his younger brother Dana. He is often the one to admit mistakes and take punishment for Dana, which brings the 2 brothers closer. Dana admired Michael's courage and love. Michael's stepfather was extremely controlling and rarely allowed him to interact with other children. His mother was too afraid of her husband to stand up for Michael or herself. This created a home environment that was isolated, secretive, and oppressive. With no outside help, Michael and Dana suffered ongoing abuse. The neighbors suspected that something was wrong in the household. In a desperate attempt to escape, Michael ran away from home but didn't know where to go. He was eventually found by authorities and shared the sad story of his family life. Unfortunately, no one helped him with his situation. Michael had difficulty expressing his genuine emotions, instead concealing them beneath a facade of indifference. He struggled with depression in his teenage years, which significantly impacted his mental well-being. However, at school, he found some relief from his struggles. Despite being introverted and feeling lonely, having responsibilities helped distract him from his difficult home life. Fortunately, Michael met Dorothy, a local business owner. Dorothy introduced him to her daughter, and although the daughter's name is not known, but Michael formed a strong bond with her. As time passed, their friendship blossomed into romance, navigating its share of highs and lows. This relationship brought out Michael's gentle, thoughtful, and cautious nature, revealing a more nuanced side of his personality. Dorothy was happy to see Michael in a new light, but at the same time, she felt concerned. She observed that he became uneasy whenever it was time to go home. Despite her daughter's frequent visits with Michael, he made a concerted effort to keep her away from his residence. Concerned by these signs, Dorothy decided to have deeper conversations with Michael. Michael eventually opened up to Dorothy about his concerns for his mother and brother's well-being. This enabled Dorothy to recognize the emotional burden and suffering that Michael was experiencing. After finishing high school, Michael enlisted in the United States Navy, which marked the start of a new chapter in his life. The Navy instills in him a sense of direction and purpose within a highly organized environment. As Michael developed a strong affection for the Navy, he realized that he had made the right choice. His newfound sense of happiness is largely due to his close relationship with his teammates. Although he would occasionally drink, Michael was always responsible and showed up for work, proving to be a calm and composed individual. During this time, Michael was dating a colleague. However, he quickly realized that the relationship was unhealthy when she became violent towards him. This brought back painful memories of his childhood. As his depression worsened, he realized he needed to end the relationship. Following the breakup, Michael dedicated himself to furthering his career. He pursued specialized training in combat medical care, which ultimately led to his appointment as a medic in the Marine Corps. Afterward, Michael met Sarah, and they fell deeply in love, eventually getting married. After getting married, Michael resigned from the Marines so he could devote his time to supporting his wife. Sarah had a positive impact on Michael's life, encouraging him to make good choices. Together, they had 3 children, and Michael was determined to be a devoted father, providing them with the best possible upbringing. In their relationship, Sarah often took the lead in decision-making, but Michael was always supportive of her choices. In 2011, Sarah found a job in Orange County, Central Florida, and the family moved there. She worked at the Mount Dora Animal Hospital, which was managed by Bo Delaporte. After Michael had difficulty finding a job, Sarah convinced Delaporte to take him on. She also emphasized the experience Michael had gained from his previous job. Michael quickly settled into his new role and showed outstanding commitment. Michael emanated happiness and had a clear passion for his work. Michael's positive demeanor made him highly sought after by pet owners. His employers, particularly Delaporte, grew fond of him, and their relationship blossomed into a strong friendship built on trust. Delaporte even entrusted him with some management responsibilities at the animal hospital. In 2014, Delaporte hired KCI, a new veterinary technician. Born on December 23, 1986, in Ion, Indiana, KCI was the second of 3 daughters to Nikki and David. She had 2 siblings, named Sarah and Brandy. She brought immense joy and positivity to her family, and also spread that energy to those around her. As KCI grew older, her love and concern for those around her deepened, fueled by her spiritual beliefs and moral principles. This gives her the strength to face life's challenges. In high school, KCI met Richard, and they were initially attracted to each other. However, as they dated, Richard noticed KCI's jealous and possessive tendencies. Her insecurity sometimes led to hurtful words and actions. Nevertheless, Richard remained patient and calm, and they eventually married after completing their studies. Over time, KCI's mother moved to Florida. Sarah and Brandy soon followed. Due to KCI's close relationship with her family, she and Richard relocated to Florida in 2009. After settling in, KCI worked occasionally as a transporter and sometimes as a dog groomer. She also began learning the trade of a veterinary technician. During this time, KC and Richard welcomed their first child, Cameron. KCI was devoted to Cameron's well-being and made it her top priority. A few years later, KC and Richard had their second child, Preston. The children grew in a happy environment filled with laughter and loving care. As KCI advanced in her veterinary technician career, she found a job at an animal clinic. There, she met Michael, who was Delaporte's right-hand man. Michael and KCI got along well, but Delaporte and Sarah both suspect that there may be something more than mere friendship between them. Even though both of them have families, but Michael found himself attracted to KCI. This attraction affected his focus and performance at work. Michael tried his best to satisfy KCI's needs, and she reciprocated Michael's feelings, and as a result they began an affair. Sarah and Michael decided to get a divorce, as did KCI and her spouse, Richard. After the divorce, Sarah was granted custody of her 3 children and relocated to Jacksonville. In contrast, KCI and Richard chose to share custody of their children, Cameron and Preston, according to a certain rule. KCI took her parenting responsibilities seriously and made sure to transport the children as agreed. Delaporte's frustration increased as Michael's work performance at the clinic continued to deteriorate. To make matters worse, Michael inappropriately approached other employees, overstepping professional boundaries. A betrayal occurred when Michael asked for time off, claiming his mother had passed away, only to use the leave for a beach vacation. Delaporte discovered the truth and subsequently terminated Michael's employment. Seeking revenge, Michael burglarized the clinic, stealing money, computer equipment, and even a gun. Delaporte identified Michael as the perpetrator and contacted the authorities. With KCI's assistance, Michael escaped to New Mexico but was eventually caught by the police. After serving a short prison sentence, Michael was released. Despite Michael's past actions, KCI remained devoted to him. The couple moved in together, and Michael became a stepfather to Cameron and Preston. Eventually, in 2017, around Halloween, Michael and KCI got married and started a new life together in a 2-bedroom trailer. Although the space is small, the affordable rent makes them feel grateful to have found a place where they can be together. In the same year, they welcomed their first child, Mercalli, followed by Ayana the next year. As their family grew to 4 children, Michael took on a job as a construction laborer to support them financially, while KCI dedicated herself to being a homemaker. She took great joy in every stage of her children's development and sought ways to capture those special moments. This led her to create a YouTube channel where she shared milestones of their family life. At first glance, their life seemed perfect, with Michael appearing calm and KCI's laughter frequently punctuating their videos. However, their relationship was not as it seemed. Behind closed doors, the couple frequently argued, and their disagreements had become a persistent problem. KCI's distrust of Michael led her to regularly check his phone, and she became suspicious whenever Michael worked late hours. A heated argument broke out between them on the night of July 10, 2019, while their children slept. The argument started when KCI discovered a message on Michael's phone that made her believe he was being adultery. The confrontation quickly turned violent, with KCI grabbing a baseball bat and pushing Michael. Michael then took the bat from her and, in a state of blind fury, he repeatedly struck her until she died. Michael put KCI's body in a plastic bag and hid it in a closet. He tried to clean up the scene as much as he could. The next morning, he took steps to prevent the children from finding out what happened. He then put KCI's body in his car. To avoid raising suspicion, Michael continued to post on KCI's social media accounts in the following days. On July 26, Michael sent a text to Richard, pretending to be KCI, asking him to take care of Preston and Cameron. Michael also texted KCI's mother, asking her to care for Mercalli and Ayana. When Richard arrived to pick up Preston and Cameron, he found it strange that KCI was not there and expressed his concerns to Michael. However, Michael dismissed Richard's concerns, saying KCI had left town for a few days. KCI's mother had a similar reaction when she came to pick up Mercalli and Ayanna. Later that day, Michael called Sarah and told her that he and KCI were separating, and he needed to take care of the children while she worked. He then picked up the children and took them to his home. During the drive, the children noticed a strong, unpleasant smell in the car, similar to rotting meat. Michael continued to visit his children at Sarah's residence for 2 weeks, driving back and forth between his home and Sarah. Meanwhile, the body of KCI remained hidden in his car. As the days went by without hearing from her daughter, KCI's mother grew increasingly worried. On August 10th, Richard returned Cameron and Preston to Michael. This time, KCI's absence was even more noticeable, and it increased Michael's concern. During their brief conversation, Michael apologized for causing Richard and KCI to divorce, and acknowledged the challenges Richard went through in his relationship with KCI. As the new school year approached, Michael realized that the absence of the children and KCI would likely raise suspicions among the elementary school staff. This realization led to a tragic turn of events. On a night that remains unspecified, Michael took Cameron out of bed and suffocated him, then placed his body in a suitcase. The next morning, he did the same to Preston, putting his body in a garbage bag. A few days later, the owner of the trailer park where Michael lived served him an eviction notice, giving him 2 weeks to vacate the premises. Amidst this dire situation, Michael went to pick up Mercalli and Ayanna. When KCI's mother saw Michael again without KCI, she became overwhelmed with anxiety and had a nervous breakdown. Her mind was consumed by a single question: where was her daughter? Michael was driving with his daughters, Mercalli and Ayanna, when he was suddenly overcome with guilt. He felt trapped and decided to turn himself in at the police station. However, when he reached the door, he changed his mind and turned back home. Upon returning, he filled the bathtub with water and tragically drowned his daughters. After their deaths, he placed their bodies in a plastic container. As Hurricane Orion approached Florida in early September, a state of emergency was declared, prompting many people to seek shelter. Michael took advantage of the chaos to transport 5 bodies, including his wife and children. He loaded them into his truck and headed north to stay with Sarah. During his stay, Sarah noticed that Michael never contacted KCI or inquired about the children, which made her uneasy. However, she chose not to ask questions due to her awareness of the marital issues. After the hurricane passed, Michael's neighbors reported a strong, unpleasant smell coming from the trailer to the property owner. The owner checked the trailer, first looking through the windows and then entering it. Although the furniture and personal belongings were still there, the smell was overwhelming, but nothing else seemed out of the ordinary. KCI's mother grew desperate as she tried to make sense of her daughter's disappearance. She suspected Michael might be in trouble with the law and hiding, which could explain why her daughter was also in hiding for her own safety. Rather than waiting, KCI's mother contacted the sheriff's office and requested a welfare check at Michael's house. When officers arrived for the welfare check, they found the house empty but appeared to have been recently cleaned. However, a strong smell of decomposition lingered, contradicting the presence of cleaning supplies near the entrance. Before the officers could investigate further, the property owner arrived and asked them to leave. Meanwhile, with the bodies still in his vehicle, Michael drove out of state into Georgia. He stopped near a wooded area and disposed of the bodies of Cameron, Preston, Mercalli, and Ayanna. As he continued driving and checked his GPS, Michael lost control of the vehicle and crashed. Although Michael escaped without injury, the vehicle was severely damaged. The police quickly arrived at the scene of the accident and were immediately hit with the strong, terrible odor coming from the wrecked truck. They find a suitcase in Michael's truck, and when they open it, they discovered KCI's gruesome body. Michael broke down and confessed to his heinous crimes on the roadside. He also revealed the location of the children, leading to his immediate arrest. KCI's family was devastated by the news, feeling as though their world had shattered. In shock and grief, they still do not understand why Michael could have so brutally murdered his wife and children. Sarah, in particular, felt an intense hatred towards Michael, a sentiment she had never experienced before. With a search warrant and new evidence in hand, investigators went back to KCI's house. Upon entering, they were met with a strong, unpleasant odor and a noticeable reddish stain on the carpet. The agents began collecting evidence from the scene, while the autopsies were being performed to gather more information about the tragic incident. Forensic results showed that Cameron sustained a fractured jaw with no other visible signs of trauma. But a towel was in his mouth. Preston was found with a noose around his neck. Mercalli and Ayanna were found in a small plastic bag together, which also contained a baby bottle with Ayanna's name on it and a pair of pink sandals. The cause of death for Mercalli and Ayanna was determined to be drowning. KCI's autopsy results showed a severe blunt force injury to the front of her skull and face, but no other signs of trauma were found on her body. When questioned by authorities, Michael remained calm and provided precise and honest answers. Michael even thanked the police officers who arrested him and said he felt he had no other choice. Michael provided a clear and chronological account of incident from the fight with KCI to his subsequent arrest. When asked about his motives, Michael said that his actions stemmed from the harsh life circumstances he endured, which led him to believe that his decision was the only possible solution. The tragedy profoundly affected everyone involved, but it was particularly shattering for Sarah. She found it extremely difficult to accept that her children had been exposed to and had lived with someone like Michael. As a result, Sarah struggled with mental health issues after learning the truth. Michael was subsequently charged with second-degree murder for KCI's death and 4 counts of first-degree premeditated murder for the deaths of the children. Michael pleaded guilty to the charges, bypassing a trial and moving directly to the sentencing phase. A 12-person jury then had to decide between 2 sentences, life imprisonment or the death penalty. The defense strategy focused on Michael's difficult childhood and mental health issues, highlighting various psychological disorders that may justify a reduced sentence. However, state prosecutors argued that the extreme brutality of the case worthy a death penalty. In January 2023, the jury unanimously recommended the death penalty, as required by state law. After a brief 99-minute hearing, the judge formally sentenced Michael to death. He also received a separate sentence of life imprisonment without parole for the murder of KCI. Michael's lawyer quickly filed an appeal following the sentencing. However, on April 28, 2023, the judge rejected the appeal and confirmed the original sentence. Prosecutors were pleased that justice had been achieved for KCI's family. Michael is still in prison, awaiting his scheduled execution. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you. The case of Sophia McKenna. Sophia McKenna was born on March 7, 1996, in North Stonington, Connecticut. Growing up, Sophia had a happy and carefree childhood. She was a bright and energetic young girl. Sophia developed a close relationship with her siblings. They were from her mother Michelle's first marriage. When Sophia was around 6 or 7 years old, her parents went through a divorce. This event left a lasting impact on Sophia's emotional well-being, causing her significant emotional pain in the years that followed. Sophia was diagnosed with bipolar disorder, a mental health condition marked by severe mood swings during her high school years. The condition affected her mood, behavior. Although Sophia received treatment, including medication and therapy, there is no cure for the condition, which posed significant challenges for both her and her family. Bipolar disorder had a profound impact on Sophia's daily life, leading to unpredictable behavior and a chaotic lifestyle. Her relationships were often unstable and those around her struggled to cope with her condition. However, in 2015, Sophia met Austin, a charismatic and optimistic person who quickly captured her heart. Sophia and Austin had a volatile relationship due to Austin's aggression and anabolic steroid use for sports. They argued frequently, sometimes leading to physical fights. Sophia's mental health struggles often contributed to these conflicts. Austin's aggression left Sophia injured several times, requiring hospitalization. When Sophia discovered Austin's affair about a month before the incident, she decided to end the relationship, but they still saw each other occasionally. Sophia persevered through her struggles and continued to progress in life. As a young woman with striking features, she worked briefly as a model for a local company's jeans advertisements, which helped fund her education. Sophia eventually graduated as a licensed massage therapist and landed a job at the Red Door, a high-end spa in a luxury hotel. It was there that she met her 20-year-old coworker, Spencer Mugford. A beach lover and keen swimmer from Florida, Spencer was hired as a sailing instructor. Spencer and Sophia developed a strong connection due to their shared interests. They started dating, but their relationship was short-lived as their families did not approve of it, mainly because they were often surrounded by trouble. Michelle, Sophia's mother, was particularly concerned about her daughter's well-being as Sophia was frequently meeting Austin, an ex-boyfriend, and drinking alcohol, which had become a regular habit. In the end, Sophia's relationship with Spencer did not work out, and they decided to remain friends. The exact reason for their breakup is unclear, but it seems Sophia may have reunited with Austin. Despite this, Sophia and Spencer continued to spend a lot of time together, both at work and outside of work. Spencer and Sophia had always been intrigued by the mysterious lighthouse and decided to visit it on the eve of Memorial Day. Their trip, however, ended in an unexplained event. On June 8, 2018, a commercial fishing vessel near the Long Island Strait made a disturbing discovery. The crew spotted something unusual in the water, and upon closer inspection, it turned out to be a corpse. The fishermen quickly alerted the Coast Guard, who then notified the police. When the police arrived, they recovered the body of a young man from the shoreline and observed unexplained bruises and abrasions on the body. The deceased was later identified as Spencer Mugford, who, along with his girlfriend, Sophia McKenna, had been reported missing just a few days earlier. To understand what led to Spencer's death, his body underwent an autopsy. The results confirmed that Spencer had drowned, and experts did not find any signs of violence or assault. However, some details from the autopsy were kept undisclosed. In the same week that Spencer and Sophia went missing, 2 other men went missing in the same area. Their bodies were later discovered. And like Spencer, they had drowned. Initially, police believed that these incidents were unfortunate accidents caused by adverse circumstances. Remarkably, despite an extensive search, Sophia McKenna's body has not been found. On the night of May 27, 2018, in the small town of Groton, Connecticut. Although the investigation is ongoing, the case remains unsolved, leaving many questions unanswered. The story revolves around Sophia McKenna and Spencer Mugford, who decide to hike to the New London Lighthouse, located along the Thames River in a location considered mystical by locals. Built in 1909, this historic lighthouse has become famous for claims of paranormal activity involving Ernie, the first lighthouse keeper. According to local legend, Ernie's grief led to his tragic death after he jumped from the roof of the lighthouse following a painful breakup. Since then, locals and visitors have reported many strange occurrences. Mysterious events have included doors and windows opening for no apparent, sheets falling off beds, and radios turning on for no reason. Sailors have also reported mysterious incidents, such as boats leaving the shore on their own. As a result, the lighthouse has become a place of paranormal stories. The following Saturday, Sophia's friend Austin tried to reach her, but his calls and messages went unanswered. Initially, Austin wasn't concerned, knowing Sophia often slept in late. As the hours passed with no response, he started to worry and contacted Sophia's mother, Michelle. Michelle hadn't checked her phone because her younger daughter had been playing with it since morning. When she finally checked, she found 7 missed calls from an unknown number. Michelle attempted to call the number back, only to reach Spencer's voicemail, suggesting that the calls might have been from Sophia. Michelle attempted to contact Sophia but was unsuccessful. She and Austin then began a search. Austin called nearby hospitals, while Michelle filed a report with the police about a missing person. They also reached out to Spencer's family, who were equally worried since he had missed a significant family event and was unresponsive to their calls and messages. Michelle and Austin visited Spencer's apartment but found no indication that he had recently been there. The night before, Spencer's father learned that his son had met Sophia, which made him and his wife worried about the problems Sophia was having. Spencer's mother said that her son had planned to go fishing with a friend. The last time she spoke to Spencer was at 10 p.m. when her son said goodnight to her. Realizing that something was wrong, the Spencer family also reported their son and girlfriend missing to the police around 6:30 p.m. Police began searching for Sophia and Spencer. During the search, Austin contacted the sheriff to share some information about Sophia and Spencer's whereabouts the night before. He also told the sheriff that he had seen a video that Sophia had posted on Snapchat the night before. In the video, recorded on Spencer's phone, Sophia and Spencer can be seen having fun on a boat, heading towards the lighthouse. The footage shows a young man rowing towards the lighthouse. Everything seems normal. The photo taken before the incident shows Sophia posing playfully in front of the lighthouse with a concrete barrier and a "no passing" sign in the background. However, the events that unfolded just minutes after the photo was taken remain a complete mystery. Photos and videos were posted confirming that Sophia and Spencer were indeed at the lighthouse. This information prompted the police to dispatch 20 different Coast Guard units to the area. An extensive search was conducted by the Coast Guard, firefighters, and police, including air, sea, and land searches. The police's first major discovery was Sophia's car parked on a university campus, with her cell phone found inside. That night, the Coast Guard found a T-shirt that Spencer had been wearing in the video. Police theorized that Spencer may have used the T-shirt to secure a boat to shore. The search for Spencer and Sophia continued overnight and into the next day. However, a storm soon rolled in, prompting state authorities to temporarily halt the search until new information or clues about the Sophia and Spencer. This decision came as a shock to their families and friends, who refused to give up hope. They took matters into their own hands, plastering the city with posters and flyers featuring the missing duo's pictures. They also appealed to the public for any information that might aid in the search. Despite numerous witnesses in the area at the time of their disappearance, none came forward with any information. The family's private search efforts continued for days, but yielded no answers. Sophia likely chose not to report the incident to the police because she and Spencer had recently had run-ins with the law. Just days before, Spencer had been arrested for drunk driving, and Sophia had been charged with aggressive behavior. As a result, Sophia may have decided that it would be safer to seek help from her mother rather than seek police intervention. It is also possible that Sophia was in a state of panic and was not thinking clearly at the time. Without more information about her situation, it is difficult to say for sure why she made this decision. Police tried to piece together events on May 26, 2018. Memorial Day was coming up. Sophia was not working that day, but Spencer agreed to cover a coworker's shift from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. After work, the pair planned to meet up and attend the city's Lantern Festival together. Their plan was to spend the remainder of the day together, including a visit to a local lighthouse known for paranormal activity, which they were eager to experience. However, what happened after Spencer's shift is unclear. There is no information on who they met or where they went, and it is unknown if they had been drinking. It is known that Sophia's car was parked on the University of Connecticut campus around 2 a.m. Sophia left her cell phone in the car, possibly due to forgetfulness. Sophia's phone was dead, so she decided to leave it behind. Spencer and Sophia took a small sailboat from campus. The boat had no motor and weighed only 14 pounds, with oars as the only means of propulsion, and headed towards the lighthouse, navigating through treacherous rocky shores without safety equipment. That was all the information police had that night. On Monday evening, a police search helicopter spotted a white and blue sailboat stuck in the rocks about 7 miles west of the lighthouse. The boat was covered in dust, indicating it had been there for some time. Although it has not been confirmed, police believe the sailboat may be the one Spencer and Sophia took from campus. Fingerprints found at the scene of the boat were never examined or disclosed to the public, making it impossible to determine if they matched the fingerprints of the missing young couple, Sophia McKenna and Spencer Mugford. A major obstacle in the investigation was the unavailability of certain key evidence. Spencer's phone was never recovered, and the police did not obtain his cell operator records, making it impossible to confirm if any calls were made to numbers other than Michelle's on the night of the disappearance. Both the lighthouse and the campus have security cameras, but unfortunately they were not working on the night of the disappearance, and therefore did not capture any video of the event. Additionally, a serious mistake was made by the police in not investigating the lighthouse immediately after the couple went missing. To keep the case in the public eye, Sophia McKenna's family created a Facebook page called Searching for Sophia McKenna in July 2018. The page allowed the family to share updates, brochures, and pleas for information with the public. In a strange turn of events, a suspicious message was sent to Michelle from Sophia's social media account, requesting money, just weeks after the disappearance. This raised concerns about potential hacking, as the police had possession of Sophia's phone at the time. The investigation into Sophia's disappearance and Spencer's death has been closed. Police have been unable to come to a clear conclusion about what happened. On July 10th, a memorial service was held in Sophia's honor, organized by her family and friends. Hey detectives! Welcome back. We've got another mysterious case to explore. The case of Joanne Nelson. Joanne Nelson was a cheerful and intelligent young woman who values the happiness of her loved ones over her own. Growing up in Hull, also known as Kingston upon Hull, on the east coast of Yorkshire, England, she lived with her parents. Her mother was a teaching assistant, and her father, Charlie, worked as an engineer for the city council. Joanne has a bubbly personality and excels both academically and socially. She is active in sports, enjoying netball, racquetball, and swimming. Although she is happy, she always dreamed of having her own family. Joanne originally pursued a career in medicine but found the role of a nurse difficult. She considered working abroad but eventually chose to work at a job center in Hull to be closer to family and friends. Joanne enjoys helping people find jobs and improve their skills, finding fulfillment in improving the lives of others. One day Joanne meets Paul. Before meeting Joanne, Paul had been in a number of serious relationships. In 1993, during his college years, he dated Carrie Thompson. Their relationship was short-lived, but Carrie reported Paul's violent behavior to the police. During arguments, he became violent, punching walls and assaulting Carrie. In 1999, Paul met Jenny Mary Clark. They married just 2 weeks after meeting, but their marriage quickly became a nightmare. On their wedding night, Paul attacked Jenny, and the abuse continued. He even choked her until she passed out. Despite these problems, Paul and Jenny decided to have children. Their daughter, Chloe, was born in 2000, and Paul and Jenny divorced shortly thereafter. When Chloe was 5, Jenny met Joanne and immediately recognized the challenges Joanne would face with Paul, as she seemed too naive to deal with such a difficult man. In 2002, Paul ended his relationship with Jenny and began dating Joanne Nelson. Their relationship began on the streets, where Paul worked as a bouncer in bars and clubs. At 27, he was experienced in relationships, while Joanne, 19, was just entering adulthood. Despite the age difference, they found support in each other, both seeking independence from their parents. Initially, they lived with Paul's mother before eventually buying their own home. However, their happiness gradually faded. Their arguments and conflicts increased. For Joanne, everything became too mundane and boring. Their differences began to strain the relationship. For example, she loved to be neat, while Paul was indifferent to it. On February 14, 2005, Joanne did not show up for work, which was unusual and worrying. On Valentine's Day 2005, Joanne Nelson mysteriously went missing. Paul was the one who reported the matter to the police. He claimed that he last saw Joanne when she was sleeping, then he left home and went to work. When he returned home, she had disappeared without a trace. Joanne, then 22, disappeared, leaving her family and friends extremely worried. The situation became even more confusing when she missed the funeral of her best friend's father and did not wish her younger sister Katie a happy 19th birthday. After the police declared Joanne missing, a large-scale search operation was launched, involving many law enforcement officers, the military, and volunteers. Since Joanne's disappearance, Joanne's father has been suspicious of Paul. Meanwhile, Katie finds it hard to believe that Paul is involved in this case because Paul has been actively involved in the search for Joanne. Paul has been working with volunteers and Joanne's family and friends. He also gave interviews to the press without the permission of Joanne's family. In a phone conversation with a reporter, Paul claimed that he had nothing to do with Joanne's disappearance. Paul asserted that his love for Joanne was real and that he could not harm her. However, a facial expression expert, Cliff, analyzed Paul's behavior during a television interview and found several suspicious signs. First, Paul did not close his eyes when talking about Joanne, which is not common for a grieving person. Second, Paul did not try to shed tears when talking about his lover. These unusual behaviors made people question whether Paul's words were truly sincere. Paul, the man who was involved in Joanne's disappearance, was eventually arrested after his mother disclosed information about his actions to the police. When questioned, Paul confessed that he had killed Joanne during an argument on Valentine's Day 2005. He said that the argument stemmed from Joanne constantly criticizing him for not doing his chores, especially when she asked him to help her wash her clothes, which angered him. When Joanne announced her plans to leave and forced him to sell the house, Paul became even angrier. In a fit of rage, Paul killed Joanne with his bare hands. He then remained calm and began to plan how to cover up the crime. He went to his mother's house, took a gardening tool, and chatted with the neighbors. He then went to the store to buy the necessary items for removing the evidence, including bin bags, rubber gloves, and disinfectant spray. The lead investigator discovered fingernail marks on the back of Paul's hand, which indicated that he had participated in the murder. This evidence confirmed Paul's confession and proved that he had committed the murder. Surveillance videos from a store near the scene of the crime showed Paul acting surprisingly calmly. Using the items he had purchased, he bound Joanne's hands and feet, stuffed her in a bag, and secured it with duct tape. He then carried her body to her car in broad daylight. After Paul hid Joanne's body in the car, he went to fill up with petrol in High Halden. He then drove about 75 miles to Bradbury Woodland, a remote forest near Winteringham in North Yorkshire. There, he carried Joanne's body for about 250 yards until he found a suitable place to bury her, among pine trees. He used branches to cover up the small hole where her body was buried. To cover up the crime, before going to work, Paul made a fake phone call to Joanne to deflect suspicion. The next day, he continued his daily life without showing any remorse for his heinous actions. Paul showed a frightening coldness by concealing his crime and continuing his normal life. After his confession, Paul said he did not remember exactly where he buried Joanne. However, he remembered that he buried Joanne in a metal gate and that there were some green bottles nearby. Detective Higgins said this information was very useful for the search. Because of Paul's suggestions, the police were able to start organizing the search by following a route through the woods. The search for Joanne lasted about 6 weeks and involved many people, including units from 3 counties working together on this grueling task. After 39 agonizing days of waiting, a team of detectives led by Ray Higgins finally found the remains of Joanne, 22, in Bransby near York. They followed Paul's description slowly. After walking about a quarter of a mile, they came upon a hole in the woods. Here they found a rubbish bag with what looked like a leg inside. It was Joanne's body wrapped in the bag. Paul, known for his history of sexual violence against women, kept his dark secrets hidden from Joanne's family and the public until the trial. At the time, he claimed to have mental health problems while working as a bouncer at the club. People who knew him from the gym said he often caused trouble at clubs and bars. The family later discovered that Paul had been taking steroids in an attempt to become a bodybuilder. Friends said he had previously been an alcoholic and that his rages may have been steroid-induced. Paul attended Sydney Smith School, then Hull College, where he completed a degree in civil engineering. He went on to study at Bishop Burton College, where he completed a degree in horticulture. Paul lived in Saudi Arabia, working with his father, Peter Dyson, in the maintenance industry. He also gained experience as a gardener and later worked as a mechanic for Pinal. From December 2004, Paul worked at Byam Timber on Somerton Road as a timber cutter until his arrest. At 15, he met Colin Allen, a martial arts expert, and they became friends. Paul confessed to the murder to Colin, leading to his arrest. Friends said he had a distorted view of himself, seeing himself as charming and attractive to women. He often used his job as a security guard to approach girls from higher social classes. On the first day of the trial, November 7, 2005, Paul surprised the entire courtroom by pleading guilty. Joanne's family was completely shocked by the confession, as they had anticipated a long, intense trial. When Paul pleaded guilty, Joanne's family said yes in unison. Afterwards, he simply looked straight ahead or kept his head down, avoiding looking at Joanne's relatives and the police. He showed no emotion on his face, even as the charges were announced. His lawyer, Harry Barl, told the court that there was no excuse for his actions. On November 8, nearly 10 months after the murder, Paul was sentenced to life in prison with a minimum of 16 years to serve. Surprisingly, in November 2019, after just 14 years, Paul, then 45, was transferred to an open prison and released on day release. The reason was that the parole board found that Paul had actively participated in a self-awareness development program and successfully completed a social improvement program. The easing of Paul's detention conditions and his day release caused deep emotional distress for Joanne's family. Katie, Joanne's sister, expressed to the media that they felt lost and unsure of how to handle the news. Paul's release brought back painful memories of Joanne's death, and the family believed he did not deserve a reduced sentence for his actions. Katie emphasized that Paul's crime was serious and premeditated, making his early release a challenging ordeal for the family. They fear he might return to their city of Hull and commit further harm, as they have been unable to secure a restriction order against him. Although there is no confirmed information about Paul's return to the city, he remains under probation supervision. Any violation of his terms or the law will result in his return to prison. Hello again, true crime fans, we've got another mysterious case to explore. The case of Jennifer Dulos. Jennifer Dullos was born in 1968 in New York. Her father is Hillard Farber, a banker, and her mother is Gloria Tenenberg, a philanthropist. Jennifer has an older sister, Melissa Irene Farber. Jennifer graduated from Brown University in 1990 and later earned a master's degree in creative writing from New York University's Tisch School of the Arts. Jennifer is married to Fotis and they have 5 children together, all named after Greek Orthodox saints, 3 sons, Petros, Theodore, and Constantine, and 2 daughters, Christiane and Cleopatra. Jennifer and Fotis were married for 13 years before ending their marriage in 2017. After that, Jennifer began to feel afraid of her ex-husband. Which makes us wonder, who is Fotis and what changed him? Fotis Dullos was born on August 6, 1967, in Turkey. He grew up in Athens, Greece, and moved to the United States in 1986. He attended Brown University, graduating in 1989. Fotis then went on to earn a master's degree in finance from Columbia Business School. Fotis met his first wife, Hilary Vanessa Alama, at Brown University and married her in Athens in 2000. After their divorce in 2004, he moved to Connecticut and married Jennifer a month later, despite having known her since he was married to Hilary. They moved to Farmington and had 5 children. The marriage of Jennifer and Fotis began to crumble in 2012 and completely collapsed in 2017. Jennifer shared her marital struggles in a blog post in March 2012. She expressed her wish to be stronger to face conflicts without fear. In 2017, Jennifer decided to file for divorce. The reason was that Fotis had an affair with Michelle Troconis, a Venezuelan colleague. Jennifer also requested custody of the 5 children, but the court only granted joint custody. Jennifer feared for her safety and that of her children. She accused Fotis of unsafe behavior, bullying, intimidation, and excessive control. She recounted an incident with Fotis on June 3, 2017. When Fotis learned that she had made plans for the children on Saturday morning, he became angry and lost control. Jennifer said Fotis became angry and agitated, causing her to run upstairs to get away from him. However, Fotis chased her upstairs. Despite Jennifer locking and bolting the door, Fotis continued to verbally and physically abuse and threaten her, leaving her feeling trapped and helpless. Jennifer felt unsafe around her husband. When she decided to file for divorce, the situation became even more dangerous. In an interview, Jennifer shared that she was very afraid of Fotis. She realized that her desire for a divorce had deeply angered Fotis, and she feared that he might retaliate by causing her harm. Jennifer revealed that when she filed for divorce in May 2017, Fotis threatened to kidnap and harm their children if she did not accept his divorce terms. Fotis even purchased a gun that year. In 2018, Jennifer filed for emergency custody of the children. During the trial, the court found that Fotis had violated multiple court orders. Finally, Jennifer was awarded primary custody of the children. Fotis was only allowed supervised visits and phone calls were monitored. Jennifer and the children moved to a rented house in New Canaan, 70 miles from Fotis's home. Fotis was devastated by Jennifer's allegations. In an email to her in 2017, he expressed concern for the children's well-being. He realized that the children needed both parents, not just one. Fotis pleaded with Jennifer to reconsider their marriage for the sake of the children. He even suggested that they could live as partners and learn to accept each other. While denying Jennifer's allegations, Fotis counterclaimed that she had turned the children against him. He claimed that Jennifer called him a psychopath and told the children that he did not care about them. Fotis also claimed that Jennifer bragged about dragging out the divorce for 2 years so she could hire the mafia to break his legs. Fotis denied threatening to kidnap his child and explained that he bought the gun to protect his home. However, Fotis's argument not be credible given the events that followed. Jennifer was last seen at around 8:05 a.m. on May 24, 2019, after dropping her child off at school in New Canaan. She had 2 doctor's appointments in New York at 11 a.m. and 1 p.m. When Jennifer failed to show up for these appointments, which she never missed, her friends reported her missing to the police. Lauren Almeida, Jennifer's live-in nanny, also noticed something unusual. When she arrived at Jennifer's apartment at 11:30 a.m., she found the Range Rover in the garage, while Jennifer's Chevrolet Suburban was missing. However, Lauren did not notify the police until 7 p.m. Jennifer's prolonged and unusual absence, along with her failure to notify anyone of her departure, raised serious concerns for her safety. After receiving disturbing reports, the police investigated and searched Jennifer's New Canaan home. The results of the search shocked everyone who cared about Jennifer. They found blood stains in the garage, on the walls, on the doors, and on the outside of the Range Rover. Inside the home, there were scattered blood stains in the kitchen, and most notably, blood from both Jennifer and her husband, Fotis. This discovery raised suspicions that Fotis may have murdered his wife. The police investigation found that Fotis was present at Jennifer's home on the day she went missing. Police found bicycle tracks around the house, indicating that Fotis had arrived there on a bicycle. According to the police theory, Fotis stalked and waited for Jennifer to return from dropping off her children at school. He then brutally murdered her, cleaned up the scene, and destroyed the evidence. A neighbor's security camera recorded a Chevrolet Suburban leaving Jennifer's home at 10:25 a.m. Police believe Fotis was the driver of the vehicle. Police alleged that Fotis hid Jennifer's body along with items used to clean up the crime scene in his vehicle. He then abandoned the vehicle about 3 miles from the town of New Canaan. Based on these suspicious actions, police believe Fotis was the perpetrator of Jennifer's death and a ruthless killer. At around 7:30 p.m. that night, security cameras recorded Fotis and his girlfriend Michelle taking out the trash. Notably, they used up to 30 different garbage bags along Alfred Avenue in Hartford. When police searched the garbage bags, they found several suspicious items in the trash bags, including toiletries, bloody clothing, and used gloves. Blood on the clothing matched Jennifer, while Fotis' DNA was found on a glove and a garbage bag. These findings confirmed police's initial suspicions that Fotis was involved in Jennifer's disappearance. The case of Fotis murdering his wife was shocking, but what was even more shocking was the involvement of his girlfriend, Michelle Triconis. Michelle, a Venezuelan woman, had many roles in her life: mother, equestrian athlete, and former ESPN reporter in South America. However, no one expected her to become an accomplice in a murder. Michelle began a relationship with Fotis while he was still married to Jennifer, contributing to the breakdown of their marriage. After Jennifer went missing, the police questioned Michelle. When asked about her whereabouts on the day Jennifer disappeared, Michelle said she had lunch with Fotis and then went with him to one of Fotis' properties to clean up in preparation for a meeting with a client. However, the police suspected that this cleaning was actually to erase traces related to Jennifer's death. On the morning of May 24, 2019, Fotis stole a Toyota Tacoma truck from an employee and drove it to New Canaan, Connecticut. A school bus camera captured the truck traveling at high speed toward Waveney Park at 7:05 a.m. Jennifer's Chevrolet Suburban was later found in the park. Police found a bicycle tire in the trunk of the truck, supporting the theory that Fotis rode his bicycle approximately 3 miles from Waveney Park to Jennifer's New Canaan home. Police believe Fotis arrived at Jennifer's home before she left. When Jennifer arrived at the garage, Fotis attacked her. He then covered up the evidence. Fotis put Jennifer's body in her Chevrolet Suburban and drove to Waveney Park, where he transferred Jennifer's body to his truck. Despite Fotis's efforts to cover up his tracks, he left behind 2 key pieces of evidence at his new home in Canaan: his DNA on the doorknob and a mixture of his and Jennifer's blood on the kitchen faucet. Police believe Fotis spent hours cleaning the house. This was reinforced by neighbor surveillance footage that showed Jennifer's Chevrolet Suburban leaving the house around 11 p.m. Police were even more convinced of Fotis's guilt when he acted suspiciously 5 days after his wife's disappearance. Fotis drove away again in the truck without permission. This time, his destination confirmed police's suspicions. He drove straight to a local car wash and detail shop. Surveillance video captured a black SUV driven by Michelle following the truck. In the video, Fotis is seen stopping at a car wash, then getting into Michelle's SUV. Police suspect their intent was to remove evidence from the vehicle. However, this attempt failed when Jennifer's DNA was discovered by police on the passenger seat of the truck. Fotis became the prime suspect in Jennifer's disappearance due to the substantial evidence against him. On June 7, 2020, Fotis was arrested and charged with murder and kidnapping in connection with Jennifer's case. This was the first time he had been charged with these crimes, although the incident had occurred earlier. Fotis and Michelle were arrested on June 1, 2019, at a hotel in Anson, Connecticut. However, they were only charged with obstructing prosecution and tampering with evidence, not murder. This is because at the time, the police did not have enough evidence to charge them with the murder. While many may think that Fotis should have been arrested earlier on more serious charges, this only happened after the police gathered more evidence. Both Fotis and Michelle pleaded not guilty. Fotis hired attorney Norm Paet to defend him. Norm was convinced that Jennifer was dead. Initially, Fotis and Michelle were released. However, in September 2019, they were arrested again on charges of tampering with evidence and obstructing justice. In October 2019, Fotis appeared in court to contest the charges against him. The judge said he would carefully review the case, listening to arguments from both the prosecution and the defense. During this time, Jennifer and Fotis's 5 children lived with their grandmother. The children's grandmother was granted temporary custody by the court. In January 2020, Fotis was arrested and charged with murdering his ex-wife in a Waterloo courtroom. At the same time, his girlfriend, Michelle, was also arrested for attempted murder. After his arrest, Michelle distanced herself from Fotis. In an interview, she admitted that she had made a big mistake in trusting Fotis. Before the incident, Michelle reportedly moved out of Fotis' $5 million home in Farmington with her daughter. Kent Douglas Mawhinney, a former lawyer and friend of Fotis, was also arrested and charged with attempted murder. Police aggressively arrested him. They believe Kent helped Fotis and Michelle create an alibi for the morning of Jennifer's disappearance. During the same period, Kent also faced charges of rape against his wife. He was divorced from his wife, and the situation became even more tense after he was arrested in connection with Jennifer's case. Kent's wife felt her life was in serious danger. Kent's wife reported to the South Windsor Police Department that her husband was plotting to kill her with the help of Fotis. During the investigation, police discovered that Kent was a member of the East Granby Gun Club, a local hunting group. Police were notified that a human grave had been found on land associated with the club. After searching the property, police made a suspicious discovery, a shallow grave on the secluded property. Police found 2 bags of lime and a blue tarp in the grave. But no body. They suspect that someone had dug up the grave. Although the suspects have been arrested, Jennifer's body has not been found. Her family is devastated. Although justice is imminent for their daughter, they acknowledge that arresting Jennifer's killer will not bring her back, so the family's grief will never be completely gone. Fotis was set on $6 million bail on January 8, 2020. He was released the following day, but is due back in court on February 8, 2020. Michelle was also released on bail. Kent was initially set on $2 million bail, but it was later reduced to more than $200,000. He was released on bail on October 19, 2020. After Fotis's heinous acts began to be discovered, he became extremely fearful. On January 28, 2020, Fotis failed to appear at an emergency hearing, prompting the judge to issue a warrant for his arrest. When police arrived at Fotis's Farmington home to serve the warrant, they found him unconscious in his car. Unable to face the consequences of his actions, Fotis attempted suicide by inhaling carbon monoxide. He connected the SUV's exhaust pipe to a vacuum cleaner and placed it inside his car. Police performed CPR and restored his weak heartbeat. He was then taken by ambulance to Yukon Medical Center, then transferred to Jacob Medical Center in the Bronx for hyperbaric oxygen therapy. While in the hospital, Fotis' children, who were living with their grandmother, visited him for the first time since he was charged with Jennifer's murder. Police found a suicide note in Fotis's car. In it, he wrote that he could not bear to spend even 1 hour in jail for a crime he knew nothing about. On January 30, 2020, Jacobs Medical Center confirmed Fotis' death. Police later released a report that included information from Anna Curry, Fotis' last girlfriend. Anna said she was with Fotis on the day of the emergency hearing. According to Anna, she and Fotis planned to drive to court together, but finally Fotis suggested they go separately. Anna admitted that she was panicked and she received a call from Fotis's lawyer asking about Fotis's absence from court. Anna was driving at the time and responded that Fotis was supposed to be there. The attorney said the GPS device showed that Fotis was still at his home in Farmington. Anna immediately realized that Fotis might have harmed himself and asked the attorney to call 911. After Fotis' death, the murder charges against him were dismissed on March 3, 2020. The judge ordered the prosecutor to apply null prosequi, abandonment of prosecution. This does not mean that Fotis is acquitted, but simply that the case cannot proceed due to his death. Abandonment of prosecution acknowledges this fact, but gives the prosecutor 1 year to reopen the case if he wishes. Otherwise, the case will be dismissed permanently. During the hearing, Fotis' attorney Norm Paet wanted to clear his client's name. He claimed that Fotis was framed and argued that the framer had dumped bloody clothes and incriminating evidence in front of Fotis's house. Norm explained that if Fotis was the perpetrator, he would not have accidentally dumped these items, leading to the police discovering them on surveillance cameras. Norm asked for the Fotis estate to be substituted as a defendant, but the request was not considered. Michelle is under house arrest after being charged with conspiracy to murder Jennifer. Michelle's attorney, John Sean, admitted in an interview that his client's case has not progressed. Michelle was scheduled to appear in court on August 6, 2020, while Kent Douglas Mamoni was scheduled to appear in court on June 2, 2020. Both have pleaded not guilty to the charges. In an interview, Michelle responded to those who judge her without knowing her well. She admitted that she can be wrong about others, but she cannot say whether Fotis killed his wife. However, she believes that believing Fotis was a waste of time, and this has been proven true. For years after Jennifer went missing, she has still not been found. Police searched for her body in several locations over the years. In 2019, they began searching Wavani Park, 3 miles from New Canaan. They used dogs and a helicopter to thoroughly search the area. The search for Jennifer expanded beyond the initial area, including New York City, where the family owned property. After a thorough search there, police turned their attention to central Connecticut. In Hartford, police discovered surveillance footage showing Fotis dumping trash bags in various dumpsters around the city. This led to a weeks-long search of the waste treatment plant, where police found key evidence. The search continued at a fishing pond in Avon that the Dullos family frequented. Police also searched properties owned by Jennifer's husband's company in central Connecticut, with an estimated 3,000 acres searched. However, despite extensive search efforts, Jennifer has not been found. In August 2021, the investigation led police to a Farmington home on Mountain Spring Road that was associated with Jennifer's husband. Police decided to search the home to follow up on previous leads. They invited Bob Perry, a well-known expert in finding unmarked graves, to join the search. Police also brought in septic tank pumping equipment and an excavator to increase the effectiveness of the search. However, to date, police have not released any information about the discovery of Jennifer's body. Although the tragedy of Jennifer was heartbreaking, it did lead to a positive outcome. In May 2021, the Connecticut Senate passed a landmark domestic violence bill. The bill was named after Jennifer and Jennifer Magnano, two victims of domestic violence. The bill received near-unanimous support from members of the Senate. Governor Ned Lamont signed the bill into law on June 28, 2021. Jennifer's family is still deeply saddened by her passing. In a recent interview, a family spokesperson expressed their deep sorrow for Jennifer. He emphasized that her wonderful personality and optimistic spirit left a deep impression, causing even those who never met Jennifer to feel heartbroken by her disappearance. Welcome back, mystery lovers. Today's case is going to keep you on the edge of your seat. The case of Rhonda Casto. Julia Simmons lives with Stephen Nichols, a divorced stock trader, in his 3-bedroom house outside Portland, Oregon. Julia and Stephen met online while she was looking for a place to rent. Julia was impressed by Stephen's charm and kindness. While living together, Stephen met Rhonda Casto, Julia's 20-year-old daughter. Although he is 10 years older than Rhonda, Stephen was attracted to her beauty and admirable personality. Surprisingly, Rhonda also had feelings for Stephen. From there, they began a romantic relationship. As Stephen and Rhonda's relationship became more serious, they decided to live together in Stephen's apartment. During their relationship, Stephen developed a close relationship with Rhonda's family, especially with her two sisters, Melanie and Tessa. Tessa, who was 9 years old at the time, was very fond of Stephen because of his fun and playful personality. As the years passed, Stephen and Rhonda lived together but were not married. Rhonda often dreamed of getting married and her friends knew this. Stephen promised to marry her in the summer of 2009. They had a baby girl and motherhood became the best thing in Rhonda's life. Her daughter became the center of Rhonda's life and she cherished every moment with her. She loved being a mother, but also wanted to return to her modeling career. According to Stephen, after giving birth, Rhonda gained a lot of weight and felt unhappy with her body. They decided to hike 25 of the most beautiful trails in Oregon together to help Rhonda lose weight. Stephen said that their relationship was good, they rarely argued and became closer. However, Rhonda's friends told a different story. They revealed that Rhonda had confided in them about Stephen's abuse. Rhonda even took pictures of her back in the mirror to document the bruises Stephen had caused. On March 16, 2009, Stephen and Rhonda, both 23 years old, went hiking together on the Eagle Creek Trail. During the hike, Rhonda took a picture of Stephen using his cell phone. Before leaving, Rhonda jokingly texted her mother, saying, "He's either going to give me a ring or throw me off a cliff. Haha." Initially, the weather was nice. However, Stephen later said that Rhonda began to act strangely. According to Stephen, Rhonda asked him what would happen if something happened to her and if he would take care of their daughter. He replied that of course he would. When the weather started to get worse, Stephen suggested that they go home. Stephen said that Rhonda wrapped a towel around her shoulders, called herself Superman, and ran down the narrow, slippery path. Stephen said he witnessed Rhonda slip and fall about 150 feet down the cliff on the Eagle Creek Trail. Stephen said he went down the ravine where Rhonda fell because he couldn't get a cell phone and held her body. He tried to call 911 but got no signal, so he left Rhonda and walked to the trailhead to contact rescuers. Rescuers then took Rhonda's body away. Rhonda's family claimed that Stephen showed no emotion at the funeral, but Stephen denied this and said that he cried a lot. He explained that when he was really sad, he would pull away from people and want to be alone. Immediately after Rhonda's death, Stephen quickly packed up his and his daughter's belongings and moved to the other side of Oregon to be closer to his family. This move left Rhonda's family feeling suspicious and wondering what had happened between Stephen and Rhonda in the final moments before she died. In 2012, Stephen decided to leave the United States to live with his daughter in China. This decision marked a new turning point in the lives of both father and daughter. Stephen decided to move to Wuxi, a city about 75 miles from Shanghai. He had lived in China during his previous marriage and had developed a deep love for the country and its people. During his time in China, Stephen worked as a teacher of English to Chinese businessmen. His and Rhonda's daughter, Ava, quickly adapted to her new life. Within 2 months of moving in, she was speaking fluent Mandarin. Both Stephen and his daughter are thriving and happy in China. Stephen met and fell in love with Landy Yin. Landy and Ava formed a strong bond, with Landy taking on the role of a mother figure. Stephen appreciated how Landy had stepped in and embraced the role of a parental figure to his daughter. After a year of dating, Stephen decided to take the next step in their relationship by proposing to Landy. He was very happy when she said yes. In February 2015, Stephen and Landy returned to the United States to prepare for their wedding. They decided to have 2 wedding ceremonies, one in the United States and one in China, to accommodate both families and friends. Stephen and his daughter arrived in the United States the day before Landy. When they got off the plane in San Francisco to transfer to Oregon, Stephen was approached by police and informed that they needed to arrest him for baggage issues. Stephen had no idea that this would lead to a series of events that would change his life forever. Within minutes, the police separated Stephen from his daughter. Little did he know that while he was in China, detectives had been investigating the death of his ex-girlfriend Rhonda. The suspicious circumstances surrounding Rhonda's fall from Eagle Creek prompted them to continue their investigation, and they eventually concluded that Stephen was responsible for her death. Rhonda's mother was instrumental in keeping the investigation moving forward. She regularly contacted the detectives to keep them updated. The police arrested Stephen at the airport for Rhonda's murder and took him back to Oregon. When he was arrested, Stephen claimed that he thought he was dreaming. Stephen hoped to open his eyes and find himself back home in China with Landy. However, this was not a dream, but reality. Stephen's bail was set at $2 million. He was jailed for 14 months awaiting trial. The judge reduced Stephen's bail to $250,000, which his attorney paid. Stephen was released on bail but must wear an ankle monitor. When Rhonda's family learned of Stephen's arrest for murder, they were overjoyed that justice had finally been served. Rhonda's mother, in particular, was overcome with emotion and burst into tears upon hearing the news. Stephen's arrest brought relief and comfort to Rhonda's family, who had been grieving her loss for years. After Stephen's arrest, his legal team conducted an investigation at the Eagle Creek trailhead where Rhonda died. Their goal was to conduct tests that would prove to the court that Rhonda's death was the result of a slip and fall accident, not Stephen's pushing her. During a preliminary hearing, Rhonda's autopsy revealed that all of her injuries were below the waist. This finding became a key element of Stephen's defense strategy, providing the basis for arguing that Rhonda committed suicide, not murder. Stephen's defense argued that Rhonda's pelvic injuries were caused by the impact of her fall. They argued that the evidence showed that Rhonda fell feet first, not somersaulting, suggesting that she had been pushed. In addition to presenting evidence of Rhonda's injuries, The defense also wanted to introduce notes from her therapy sessions as additional evidence. The notes show that Rhonda was depressed but never suicidal. Rhonda also described her relationship with Stephen as lacking love. Stephen's defense attorney argued that Rhonda's depression and the way she described the relationship were signs that she was suicidal. They introduced this evidence to cast doubt on the claim that Stephen pushed Rhonda to cause her death. Stephen also claimed that Rhonda had attempted suicide multiple times before they met. Rhonda's family denied these allegations and said Stephen was lying. They accused Stephen of blaming Rhonda for her suicide to cover up his crimes. Stephen also claimed that Rhonda had been abusing drugs since she was 12 years old. According to the medical examiner's report, Rhonda used only small amounts of marijuana and prescription medications to treat postpartum depression and anxiety. This contradicts his claim that she abused multiple substances. During the preliminary hearing for Rhonda's murder, a shocking revelation was made. Stephen, in his early 30s, had been having an affair with Rhonda's 16-year-old sister, Melanie. This came as a surprise to many due to the significant age difference between them. The prosecution argued that this inappropriate relationship may have been the motive for Stephen's murder of Rhonda. They believed that Rhonda had discovered her husband's behavior, leading to tension that may have led Stephen to kill her. After being arrested for Rhonda's murder, Stephen was indicted on 5 additional counts of sexual abuse against Rhonda's sister, Melanie Casto. Specifically, 2 counts of third-degree sexual assault and 3 counts of third-degree oral copulation. While awaiting trial for the 2005 murder, Stephen pleaded guilty to 2 counts of sexual abuse. He signed a statement admitting to having sex with Melanie Casto on 2 occasions. However, Stephen later claimed that he was coerced into confessing and that his confession was untrue. Stephen explained that he only confessed because he believed doing so would allow him to fight and have a chance to regain custody of his daughter. Stephen claimed that he wanted his daughter back and felt desperate. However, the state pointed out that the relationship between Stephen and Melanie had lasted for more than 4 years. Stephen later admitted to having sex with Rhonda's teenage sister, Melanie. The state presented evidence in the form of a text message from Rhonda to Melanie. In the text message, Rhonda called Stephen a piece of trash and accused him of using Melanie to hurt her. This occurred before the fateful hike at Eagle Creek, where Rhonda died after falling. Rhonda's mother claimed that her daughter knew that Stephen was trying to drive a wedge between the 2 sisters. She added that Rhonda loved her sister and wanted to mend her relationship with Melanie. The state concluded that Rhonda and Stephen's relationship was not as amicable as Stephen claimed. The court received additional evidence of Stephen's past sexual misconduct. Just 6 months after his daughter's mother died, Stephen was arrested and charged with 5 counts of sexual abuse of a 13-year-old girl. Although he initially denied it, Stephen later admitted to sending sexually explicit text messages and nude photos to the victim. He pleaded guilty to 1 count of sexual harassment. During the preliminary hearing, the prosecutor presented photos of bruises on Rhonda's back. Rhonda's best friend testified that she had heard Rhonda and Stephen arguing on the phone on multiple occasions. This evidence suggested that the relationship between Stephen and Rhonda was abusive. In addition to the photographic evidence, the court heard testimony from Stephen's ex-wife, who alleged that in November 2003, Stephen tried to strangle her and throw her over the balcony of their 5th-floor apartment. However, Stephen was not charged and denied all charges. For their part, Rhonda's family firmly believes that Stephen, her boyfriend, is responsible for Rhonda's death. Police suspect he killed Rhonda to collect her life insurance. Her mother said Stephen had lost a lot of money trading stocks the previous year and was struggling financially. In addition, people who knew Rhonda said she loved her 9-month-old daughter very much and could not have killed herself by jumping into Eagle Creek. In May 2017, Rhonda's family was shocked to learn that the state had reached a plea deal with the defense attorney. Stephen pleaded guilty to manslaughter based on criminal negligence. Although he believed he killed her, the lack of physical evidence that he pushed her off the trail in Eagle Creek made the case weak. Stephen was given credit for time served while awaiting trial, but was given 3 years of probation. After removing his ankle monitor, Stephen was released. Rhonda's family and friends said Stephen's plea deal was unfair and that he deserved a harsher sentence. During the sentencing hearing, Rhonda's sister gave an emotional statement. She expressed anger and frustration towards Stephen, saying that he had destroyed their family and caused immeasurable pain. Rhonda's mother also expressed confusion and grief, unable to understand how Stephen could have taken her daughter away from her and torn their family apart. Stephen insisted that he did not force Rhonda, but accepted the deal because the time limit for regaining custody of his daughter was about to expire. He said that he was willing to take responsibility for his actions for the sake of his daughter. However, Rhonda's family and friends still did not believe Stephen's explanation. In a 2018 interview, Stephen made a shocking statement about Rhonda's fate. According to Stephen, on the day of Rhonda's accident, when he walked down the Eagle Creek Trail and found her, Rhonda was still alive. The interviewer then asked Stephen if he had put Rhonda out of pain that day. Stephen responded by presenting a hypothetical scenario of mercy killing. He argued that such an act could be considered justifiable homicide, although it would still be murder. Although Stephen did not directly admit to harming Rhonda, his comments implied that he was involved in her death. In 2017, Rhonda's mother filed for Social Security benefits for her niece, Rhonda's daughter, Ava. She claimed that her niece lived with her and promised to use the benefits to care for the baby. However, the state alleges that from April 2010 to December 2014, the time Rhonda's mother claimed her niece lived with her, the child actually lived with her biological father, Stephen. Rhonda's mother is accused of stealing nearly $40,000 from the government over a 5-year period. Her defense attorney argued that her actions were motivated by a desire to prevent Stephen from gaining custody of Rhonda's daughter and from benefiting from Rhonda's $1 million life insurance policy. According to the attorney, Rhonda's mother's goal was to protect her granddaughter from being taken advantage of. They also pointed out that she had a history of depression, which became worse after her daughter died. To cope with the pain, she used marijuana as a way to self-medicate. The defense argued that her use of the drug impaired her judgment and thinking. The judge sentenced Rhonda's mother, 53, to 1 month in prison and 3 years of probation after she pleaded guilty to welfare fraud. In addition to the sentence, she was ordered to repay $39,100 in stolen benefits. Rhonda and Stephen's daughter was placed in foster care in October 2015 after the Department of Human Services stripped them of parental rights. The decision came after Stephen pleaded guilty to sexually abusing a 13-year-old girl. The Oregon court eventually stripped him of his parental rights. However, Stephen has appealed the decision. Hi everyone, thanks for returning. Let's unravel another perplexing mystery. The case of Alexandria Koschel. Alexandria Koschel. Born on September 11, 1997 in St. Louis, Missouri, Alexandria, commonly known as Ally, is the adorable daughter of Cindy and Keith and has an older brother named Andrew. Alexandria has a friendly and approachable personality. From a young age, Alexandria's bright smile and warm personality attracted people. As she grew up, Alexandria's positive energy spread a positive life to those around her. She spends time with her friends, classmates, and family members. Alexandria's ability to connect with people from all walks of life is truly remarkable. Alexandria is a charming and compassionate person who always helps those in need. She attended Lindbergh High School, where she developed her passion for athletics. During high school, Alexandria met her best friend, Maddie Norris, and they formed a close bond and friendship that grew into a deep and trusting sisterly bond. Alexandria and Maddie shared a passion for exploring life and trying new experiences. Together, they faced challenges, laughed, and made lasting memories. During their time together, they enjoyed afternoons spent watching movies. One of their favorite movies was Legally Blonde. Once Alexandria got her driver's license, she and Maddie often drove around town in Alexandria's convertible. As their senior year approached, Alexandria still had no date for the upcoming prom. Although a few guys had asked her out, she had never had a serious relationship or boyfriend. Feeling frustrated, she considered skipping the event. However, Maddie asked to be Alexandria's dance partner at the prom. Alexandria was deeply moved, and so Alexandria wore a beautiful red dress to the prom. After graduating from high school, Alexandria made her dream of attending the University of Mississippi in Oxford, Mississippi come true. She was drawn to the University of Mississippi, also known as Ole Miss, because of its large student body. An avid sports fan, she was especially impressed by the school's renowned football program. In 2006, Alexandria began her freshman year at Ole Miss, where she majored in marketing and business. While at Ole Miss, Alexandria joined a sorority and became one of its founding members. She is also president of the Ole Miss Golf Club. Alexandria, with a strong passion for sunsets, she took to taking pictures to capture their beauty, with the aim of sharing this beauty with the world. Alexandria created an Instagram account to showcase her beautiful sunset photos. One night, while at a bar in downtown Oxford, Alexandria met Brandon Theld, a charming young man from Fort Worth, Texas. She was immediately attracted to him and invited him to several sorority dances. Over time, Alexandria's feelings for Brandon grew. Born into a loving Christian family, Brandon had a fulfilling childhood, with his father being a prominent doctor in Fort Worth. Growing up, Brandon had a classic Texas childhood filled with activities like hunting, fishing, and soccer. Alexandria's love of the outdoors made him eager to participate in a variety of outdoor activities. During school breaks, Alexandria's best friend Maddie from St. Louis visited Alexandria in Oxford, Mississippi. According to Alexandria, Maddie was excited to see Brandon. However, during Maddie's time there, Brandon did not come to visit and see Alexandria's deceased best friend. This left her heartbroken. Maddie witnessed Alexandria's sadness and felt sorry for her friend. Despite her trauma, Alexandria remained strong and focused on her studies at Ole Mississippi. Alexandria had a great first year, with high grades, new friends, and a strong sense of humor. The summer of 2019, right before Alexandria's senior year, was a time of great anticipation for Alexandria and her parents, Cindy and Keith. They were all looking forward to her senior year at Ole Mississippi. Alexandria's parents decided to visit her at Oxford University for a few days. They were happy to see how quickly their daughter adjusted to her new surroundings. At the time, Alexandria was busy teaching a gym class and attending summer school. When her parents arrived, Alexandria gave them a tour of the campus, showing them her favorite spots in town. The visit gave her parents, Cindy and Keith, the opportunity to see firsthand how their daughter has grown and be proud of all she has accomplished. Cindy, her mother, cooks Alexandria's favorite dinner. During the meal, they shared fond memories. Alexandria's parents had originally planned to return home to St. Louis, but she asked them to stay an extra day so they could experience more of what Oxford had to offer. Cindy and Keith agreed to extend their stay. On July 19th, after returning home, her parents called Alexandria around 7 p.m. She answered the phone, still sleepy from her nap, and explained to her mother that she planned to go out with friends that evening. Cindy told her daughter that she loved Alexandria and hung up. Little did she know that would be the last time she would speak to her daughter. Sardis Lake is a large recreational area 30 minutes from Oxford that has many hunting camps. The area is large and is patrolled by the local police department for safety. On June 20, 2019, a police officer began patrolling Sardis Lake early in the morning. As the officer drove around the lake, he noticed near a picnic table the body of a young woman lying on the ground. The officer was shocked by the discovery and immediately called for help. Other officers and paramedics arrived on the scene a few minutes later. Upon arrival, the officer found a wallet in a nearby ditch. When the wallet was opened, it contained an old Miss School ID and a driver's license identifying the owner as Alexandria Koschel. Later, after the discovery of Alexandria's body at Sardis Lake, the police had to notify her parents, Cindy and Keith. However, they were away from home in St. Louis at the time. Her mother was devastated when she heard the news about her daughter. The news of Alexandria's death shocked her friends as well as her parents. Alexandria's friends turned to social media, using the hashtag #JusticeForAllie to express their grief and demand justice for her. They share fond memories of Alexandria in social media posts, talking about the positive impact she had on their lives. And her friends sent their condolences to her family. Following the tragic death of Alexandria, we express our deepest condolences to the Alexandria family during this extremely difficult time. At the crime scene near Sardis Lake, police found White Claw water bottles and .40 caliber shell casings on the ground. A ballistics expert was called in to analyze the scene and piece together the events surrounding Alexandria's murder. The expert determined that the killer was initially sitting across from Alexandria on a picnic bench when they fired the first shots. However, after the first shot, the killer stood up and began walking around the table toward Alexandria, firing multiple shots as they approached. One bullet missed Alexandria and struck the wooden picnic table. While searching for evidence, police searched Alexandria's apartment but did not find her phone. However, they discovered that Alexandria's Apple Watch had some unexpected syncs with her text messages the night before she was killed. When they examined the messages, they discovered that Alexandria had been having lengthy conversations with Brandon Paet. The messages revealed that Alexandria and Brandon had planned to meet before she was killed. Police investigating Alexandria's murder contacted Brandon on Sunday morning to ask to meet at the police station. However, Brandon declined the invitation that day but agreed to meet the next day at 8:30 a.m. Monday. On Monday, Brandon failed to show up at the police station as scheduled, prompting police to trace his cell phone. Cell phone data showed that Brandon was traveling south on Interstate 55 toward Memphis, leading police to suspect that he was trying to flee. As a result, they issued an arrest warrant and alert for his vehicle, which was easily identifiable due to its unique license plate. 2 hours after the warrant was issued for Brandon, the Memphis Fugitive Task Force located his vehicle at a gas station. Brandon was found sitting in his vehicle at a gas pump, where task force agents arrested him and notified Mississippi police. When police searched Brandon's vehicle, they discovered a .40 caliber handgun. Brandon's clothing was also found to be covered in blood after he exited the vehicle. After his arrest and return to Mississippi, police began tracking Brandon in the days leading up to the Alexandria murders. On Saturday, July 20th, Brandon visited friends and went bowling. The next day, Brandon visited another friend, bringing a 6-pack of beer and the same .40 caliber handgun found in his vehicle. The friend reported that they talked for a while, but when the friend woke up on Monday, Brandon was no longer there. Brandon's background check did not reveal any history of violence or altercations. Interviews with friends and family members of both Brandon and Alexandria provided detailed information about the couple's history. They met at a local bar in Oxford during their freshman year and initially began dating. However, their relationship declined during their sophomore year. Notably, Alexandria's loved ones noticed a change in her demeanor, as she seemed to be more invested in the relationship than Brandon. This imbalance led to tension between the two. Brandon eventually blocked Alexandria from contacting him because she frequently went out at night, drank, and then called him. A year after their breakup, Brandon and Alexandria got back together the summer before Alexandria's senior year. They decided to rekindle their relationship. However, the reunion did not last long. Brandon was eventually charged with Alexandria's murder, specifically premeditated murder, which carries the death penalty. When news of Brandon's arrest spread, it caused widespread shock and attracted intense media attention in Oxford. The community was caught up in speculation and rumors as people shared their theories about the case. Reporters descended on the town, seeking interviews with people close to Alexandria and Brandon. In September 2019, Brandon pleaded not guilty to murder. As police continued to gather evidence, they reviewed text messages exchanged between Brandon and Alexandria before her murder. The messages revealed that Alexandria was concerned that she might be pregnant in April 2019, 3 months before her death. On April 14, Alexandria sent Brandon a photo of a home pregnancy test result. He made it clear that they would not keep the baby and suggested that they could buy abortion pills. Alexandria, however, did not want an abortion, and she thought that she would meet someone who would love her and her child. Despite this, Brandon was adamantly against having a child, telling Alexandria that it would ruin his life. Police also discovered surveillance footage that showed Alexandria leaving a bar in Oxford Square at around 11:45 p.m. on July 18. About an hour later, at 1:30 a.m., Alexandria met Brandon and he drove them to Sardis Lake. Brandon's defense attorney claimed that he and Alexandria had been drinking throughout the day. At Sardis Lake, they sat at a picnic table and listened to music. Brandon then got up and walked to his truck, where he used drugs. He walked back to Alexandria, returned to his truck, and retrieved a .40 caliber gun. By the time Brandon retrieved his gun, there had been a shooting on the other side of the lake. After the incident, Brandon and Alexandria continued to talk, but the situation became heated, and Brandon shot her. According to the defense, Brandon's actions were influenced by the combined effects of drugs and alcohol. The police and Alexandria's family saw the incident from a different perspective. They believed that Brandon killed Alexandria because he suspected she was pregnant, which he believed would ruin his life. To them, the murder appeared premeditated. Brandon agreed to a plea deal with state police on August 27, 2021, avoiding the death penalty. Under the deal, Brandon admitted to first-degree murder and received a life sentence without parole. Alexandria's loved ones attended the hearing. Brandon addressed Alexandria's family after the sentencing, expressing remorse for his actions and asking for their forgiveness. He acknowledged the great pain he had caused and hoped they could find forgiveness in their hearts. Although Alexandria's autopsy report showed that she was not pregnant at the time of her death, her mother, Cindy, believes that Alexandria was pregnant and lost the baby.